Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
When he heard the phone ring, Dominic opened his eyes with difficulty and fumbled for the phone. The screen showed that it was his sister Anna calling. It was 2:30 in the morning. Something must have happened. Dominic knew that Anna's husband had recently been hospitalized with some kind of infection, but it had been a few days. He should have been discharged. He answered the phone. "Dominic, hi. Sorry to wake you up. Can you talk to me a little?" Almost crying, she asked. "Of course, Anna. What's wrong? Why are you crying? Is it something with Harry, or did you two have a fight?" "Dominic, he's dead." He heard sobbing on the other end of the line. It was like a weight had been lifted from his heart. "Dead? How? You said it was just a cold. You don't die of that." "Dominique, that's not all. I'll probably die soon too," said Anna and burst into tears, unable to hold back her emotions. "Anna, I'm sorry about your husband, but no one has ever died of grief. Everything will be all right. I'll be there tomorrow." "Dominique, you don't understand. He didn't die of a cold." "What did he die of?" "The doctor said he had HIV. I've taken a test, but I don't expect it to be all right." "HIV? I couldn't believe my ears," my brother asked. "But how? You've lived together for 5 years. Didn't you know anything about it?" "No, I was stunned when the doctor told me. Harry was getting worse and worse. They were taking tests for everything possible, and that's how they found out. He never even mentioned it once. But you couldn't have known. He had to be on medication. He had to be on medication." "Did you see any of that?" "He was taking some vitamins and supplements. I just didn't get into it. He was a bit of a health nut, but he never mentioned his diagnosis." "You bitch," Dominic swore. There were a lot of other words on his tongue, but his sister was already sobbing into the phone. There was no point in upsetting her even more. If he were alive, I'd strangle him myself. "Get in line," Anna said sadly in reply. She herself would have strangled her husband if he could still breathe. In 5 years, had she never once been told that he was HIV positive? It just didn't make sense to her. She loved this man. She married him. They were going to have a child together. "You bitch." "Anna, don't get upset beforehand. If he was on medication, you might not have gotten the disease." "Really? We never used protection. I'm pretty sure he gave me all his contagion." "Dominic, he wanted a baby. What the hell was he thinking? What if I'd gotten pregnant?" "You didn't." "No, I got tested. What difference does it make now? My life is over." "Okay, don't be ridiculous. It's not over. Even if you're sick, there's a cure for it now. You can live for a long time." "But how? I don't want to live." "Dominic, it's more than betrayal. He looked into my eyes every day. He smiled at me, he kissed me. He told me he loved me, and every day he slowly killed me. How's that?" "I'm sorry, little girl. That's a question I can't answer. It's just not in my head." "All right, here's the plan. You find some tranquilizers, take them, and then go to bed. I'll be on the first flight out in the morning. I'll book my ticket right now." "Okay. Are you sure you're coming?" she asked with such hope that her brother's heart sank. "Of course I'll see you soon. I haven't told my parents yet. You don't tell them either, okay?" "I won't. I have no idea how to break the news to them." "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Love you and take care of yourself." "Love you too," Anna said and passed out. Sedatives? She had never taken them before because she considered herself a perfectly happy person. She and Harry had married 5 years ago. She was 20 then, and he was 7 years older. Closing her eyes, Anna saw what he'd been like when they first met. Tall, handsome, so masculine in his look. He stirred her blood with a look and a smile. She fell in love with him at first sight, so when 2 months after meeting him, he offered her hand and heart, she agreed. It seemed that such love is written only in books. Harry was great at everything. He was a passionate husband, a wonderful family man, a man with golden hands. He could fix things that would be easier to throw away. And now all this pales after one single word, HIV. Anna could not even mourn his passing because she was angry to the pulse. Of course, many people with such a diagnosis live for many years, but there are certain rules. She had been told about HIV at school many years ago. The teacher had told her that it was not a verdict, but also that it was necessary to protect oneself, to take some pills to avoid contact with blood. Anna did not know whether her husband had taken HIV medication, but apparently he had, since he had lived so long. If it hadn't been for the COVID, she wouldn't have known he had another disease. It wasn't a common cold. And that's what crippled her husband and also revealed his secret. A terrible secret. And now, how do you move on? People who have never faced such a problem often think that HIV sounds like a sentence. But these are just words. When you learn something like this about yourself, it is not just a sentence, it is a blow under the breath, which makes your eyes dark and your knees bounce. And the worst thing is that she was hit by a man in whom she had loved for many years. Her husband. Anna had no doubt she was sick. Not only unprotected contact, but other little things that were embarrassing to even talk about. She had no doubt that the result would be positive or false negative. Lately, she had been bleeding sometimes after a stormy cupcake with her husband. She'd been meaning to go to the women's doctor, but hadn't had the time. It seemed like such a small thing, but now, her head was exploding with 1,000 different thoughts. She felt like her life was over. Sedatives? She couldn't find them at home, but in her search she found a bottle of cognac. Anna poured herself a shot and downed it in one gulp. She wanted at least a little to dull the pain that was eating her from the inside. 1 second, third. After the fourth one, her head became quieter and calmer, but not all the emotions had subsided. Then the fifth and sixth, and then she didn't notice how she passed out right at the table in the kitchen. Anna woke up because someone was banging on the door, probably with her feet. Through her headache, she remembered that her brother Dominic was coming and went to let him in. "You look awful," he said as he entered the apartment and immediately hugged her sister tightly, but she tried to pull away. It seemed to Anna that even a normal hug could make her brother sick, though she realized that wasn't true. It was just that she loved Dominic so much that she couldn't allow even the slightest possibility of hurting him. Big brother. He had always been her rock. They might have fought a lot when they were kids, but as they grew older, they realized the power of kinship. She could talk to him about anything. He's her older brother. "Thank you for coming, little brother," she said sadly and invited him into the living room. The rooms were not cleaned. For the last few days, Anna had almost lived in the hospital. Harry's things were still lying around, as if trying to remind her of what had happened. She wanted to throw all reminders of him out of the house, and preferably out of her body too. "Anna, have you called the hospital yet? When are the results coming back?" "They said they'd call. The doctor said it wouldn't be long, 1 or 2 days. I still can't get my head around it." "Me neither. My head was splitting apart, and yesterday's anxiety and fear for my own life have returned." Remembering how the alcohol had made her feel better yesterday, Anna wanted to drink again, but it was still noon on the clock. "When is the funeral?" he asked gently. Anna sighed. "I have to bury that bastard, and that's not cheap." "Couldn't you just throw this corpse in the river?" she joked angrily. "I'm afraid it won't work." Dominic liked the idea, but he realized that he could go to jail for such a thing. "No, we have to do it properly." "Do I have to bury him? He killed me, and I have to." "Anna, don't give up on yourself. Maybe you'll slip up again." "I wish I had your hope, but I'm sure you don't. Have you ever buried anyone?" "What do you have to do?" she asked. "No, but I think if you call the funeral home, they'll do it themselves." "Maybe you're right." Anna picked up the phone, found a website offering similar services, and called them. After a short discussion of details, they managed to organize the funeral for tomorrow. "Will you come to choose a coffin and accessories?" asked a pleasant male voice in the receiver. "All the cheapest and darkest," she replied. "Will you do it?" "Yes, all your wishes will be taken into account. I'm sorry," said the same voice, and then the call disconnected. "It's so simple," Anna said to her brother, surprised and sad. "I sent you money to your card. Even for the cheapest thing, you'll have to pay." "Thank you. You didn't have to. He doesn't deserve your help." "I'm not helping him. I'm helping you. Thank you." "Anna, we have to tell your parents." Dominic suggested it delicately. "At least that he's dead. And I have to play the grieving widow at the funeral. If my parents find out about HIV, it would break their hearts. I don't have to tell them yet. If I don't tell them, they'll be just like him." "Anna, it's up to you, but I have to call." She thought for a while and decided to tell her parents only about her husband's funeral and to tell them about everything else when they arrived. She didn't want anyone to have a heart attack. There weren't many doctors in their village after all. It's safer in the city. My mother wailed for a long time when she heard the sad news, but my father only sighed. How could it be? How could it be? So young. A little to 33 did not live. After taking a break from talking to her parents, Anna called Harry's family. His mother was sobbing into the phone, and his father was only gravely silent, but you could see in his eyes that he was in shock. "Come back tomorrow or tonight," said the daughter-in-law at the end. "Of course, Anna, we'll come. Now we'll transfer money to you so that there will be enough for everything." And they also sent a few thousand to Anna's card. When she saw the amount on her account, she even smiled. The rest of the day passed like a blur. Anna and Dominic drove over to that bureau to make sure everything was in order. She warned that the staff needed to be careful because they were burying someone with HIV. She didn't know if she should have said that, but she wanted to warn them just in case. Harry's sister Alice arrived in the evening. Anna had liked her a lot before, and they had even become friends. But now her hatred for her husband was slowly spreading like an invisible veil to the other members of his family, enveloping them in some kind of net or cocoon. "Mom and Dad will be here first thing tomorrow morning. I went earlier to help you," said my sister-in-law sadly. "You don't need to help anymore," Anna replied dryly, and then she couldn't stand it any longer and asked, "Did you know Harry has HIV?" She realized from Alice's eyes that her sister knew, but how could she? "I didn't know, but I guessed." "What do you mean?" Anna asked indignantly. "Before you, he lived with a woman for about a year. She was 2 years older than him. She had 2 children. Harry broke up with her when he found out she was HIV positive." "Did it occur to you to tell my sister?" Dominic asked. Harry said he'd been tested, that he was clean. Alice seemed to be speaking honestly. "I didn't think he caught the disease." "He lied to you," Anna said angrily. "So did I. But at least you could guess, and no one even hinted to me." "I'm sorry, Anna. If I had known, I would have told you." "Somehow I believe you." "Okay. And you?" My sister-in-law asked me gently. "Did you take the tests?" "Yes, the results won't be back until tomorrow. I called there today." "I wish everything was all right," said Alice and looked up as if she was talking to God. "I don't have much hope for that, to be honest." "I'll pray." "What's the use?" Dominic snorted. "Prayers can't help you." "I'll pray anyway." "How about a little drink?" Anna suggested, barely able to live with the thought until the evening. The rest of the evening they sat, drank and snacked, but did not talk much. Usually, when someone dies, relatives gather around the table and remember different stories about the deceased. Mostly good, kind, or funny. Of course, there had been many such stories in Anna and Harry's lives too, but she didn't want to remember them now. She didn't want to remember at all. She wanted to forget everything and anything. She was so angry that sometimes she felt like she was going to suffocate from that anger. Dominic saw what was happening to her, tried to tell her something, but had no idea how to comfort her. At least he tried to distract her from her sad thoughts. It was already 11:30 when he suggested to his sister and the guests that they go to rest. Anna was already pecking her nose in the table, so she agreed at once, and Alice suddenly said, "Anna, could you not tell your parents about HIV? I'm asking you very much. They are already in shock. We can't let them know the whole truth. My father won't survive it. He won't understand. He'll curse Harry and he'll never find his place in the world. Please don't tell them the whole truth." "Can you do that? Are you serious now?" Anna asked, a little sobered by Alice's request. "Yes, I realize it's a terrible request, but please, don't tell him. If you're worried about your brother's afterlife, it's for nothing. He's not going to find a comfortable place there anyway. I've already cursed him," Anna said angrily and went to bed. Alice only looked at her back in horror. All this did not fit in her head. It would seem that her brother's death was a terrible loss, but it was all so complicated. The request of her sister-in-law made Anna so angry that she could not sleep for a long time. Her mind was so foggy, but sleep refused to take over her body and brain. She lay there and against her will remembered how recently her husband slept on the neighboring pillow. He had told her every day before going to bed that he loved her. But could one love a man and lie to him about such things? Hardly. It seemed as if one horrible day had crossed off 5 years of life together. All of Harry's words seemed empty now, and he himself seemed to her like an empty shell with no feelings and no soul. When she finally fell asleep, the peace of mind did not overtake her, for she had dreamed of her late husband. Harry looked so calm, but as if he was angry. "How could you?" she asked him. "How could you not tell me anything?" "Why should I have?" he answered dryly. "It's my life. Don't you understand?" "What about mine?" "Nobody told me it would be like this either. And you decided to take revenge on the universe through me. Perhaps. It's inhuman. I agree. Don't you care that I might be dead soon?" "Well, I'm dead." Anna woke up realizing she was in tears. She remembered the dream as if it had really happened. She felt even heavier. Of course, she realized that it was just a dream, but she had so often had dreams that had come true. Well, she believed in the power of dreams. Perhaps Harry had come to her to say goodbye, but not to apologize. Bastard. Early in the morning, the family began to gather. Anna and Dominic's parents were the first to arrive. They were dressed in dark clothes, looking sad. "Daughter, we'll help you. Don't worry. Everything will be all right. Time heals." "Thank you, Mommy. I know you're here for me. Thank you." Anna only answered, feeling as if she was saying what was customary or what she wanted to hear. Her father only hugged his daughter tightly, trying to take away all her pain with his strong arms, and then whispered in her ear, "I love you so much." It was so touching, she even had tears in her eyes. "I love you too, Daddy," she said and kissed his shoulder. She thought that if she just touched her skin to her family, she would pass her disease on to them. She knew that wasn't true, but it just seemed impossible to get rid of the feeling. Soon Harry's parents arrived. His mother was inconsolable. Julian was sobbing and screaming, unable to comprehend what was happening. Where is he? Where is he?" his father-in-law asked. "Harry?" "Yes, it's customary to have a sleepover at home before." "No, you'll meet him at the cemetery." Anna answered only, trying to hide the anger inside her. "We live on the 4th floor without an elevator. Who would drag him here?" In fact, she had no such thoughts. She didn't want to see his face all night, didn't want to know he was around. In her mind, Anna had already buried him and cursed him. "It's not human," resented her mother-in-law. Alice now and then suspiciously looked at her daughter-in-law, hoping that she had enough wisdom and tact not to dump on her parents all the sins of their son. "Well, as it is," Anna only said and went to her room. She closed the door, but soon Dominic came to her, leaving the parents to talk among themselves. The funeral was to be held at noon. They were still over 3 hours away. Anna tried to figure out how to survive this time so that she wouldn't kill anyone or die herself from the emotions tearing at her soul. Grief. No, she didn't have that feeling at all, but she had to play the part, though it was not working out well. Dominic could see the anger and resentment in almost every look she gave him. He didn't know if his sister planned to tell her family, but he thought that was a decision only she could make. "Come on, it'll be weird if you sit here the whole time until the funeral." Anna looked glumly at her brother, thought a little, and then answered, "I don't care. Go to them if you want. I can't be there yet. Really go, or they'll start breaking into the room soon. Will you be okay?" "Yeah, I'll be fine." As soon as Dominic was out the door, Anna pulled out the rest of the whiskey she'd stashed away from the dresser from last night's feast. She took a big gulp straight from the bottle and then another. Afterward, she lay in bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. She wanted oblivion. She wanted this day to be over as soon as possible, but no, she would have to live through it all. Dominic managed to convince his parents that he shouldn't touch his sister, that she wanted to be alone. They didn't agree right away, but then they decided they could give her some freedom. Mother-in-law was more difficult to convince, but Alice at her own risk persuaded her mother not to touch her sister-in-law, say she is in sorrow. At the beginning of 12, Anna herself came out of the room. She was wearing a beautiful black dress with lace sleeves. She did not braid her hair, but brushed it so as not to look like a total lame ass. By then the living room was filled with people. Harry's cousin, a couple of his friends, his school friend Angelica, and his aunt and uncle had arrived. They all looked so sad and depressed, and Anna was a little tipsy, so she took a couple more sips of whiskey before joining the others. The funeral director knew his business. A hearse with Harry's body arrived at the driveway at the exact time specified, and then the crowd followed him to the cemetery in a rented bus. When Julian saw the coffin in which her son was buried, she looked at her daughter-in-law strangely, but she didn't say anything out loud, just gave her a judgmental glance, saying, "You found something to save money on." Recently, they had buried her husband's mother, so the mother-in-law knew what and how. She saw that Anna had chosen the cheapest things for their beloved son. After a while, everyone stood in the cemetery near the freshly dug grave. The bishop was singing the funeral, waving his smoking censer. Some specially ordered women were singing to him, and others were kneeling and crying. Apparently, all this was part of the service, but none of it touched the widow's heart. When everything was quiet for a few seconds, Anna's phone rang as if out of spite. The sound of the message seemed to break the silence and drew the crowd's eyes to her. She opened the message. It was an email alert from the clinic where she had taken the tests. "Your tests are ready. You can see the result in your personal cabinet at the link." Anna's trembling hand clicked on that link and opened the file. The result was positive. The message was the last straw. Anna's patience ran out. It had been cracking at the seams before, but now it burst like a balloon inflated too much. She screamed as if someone had kicked her again. The people in the cemetery stared at her in surprise, not understanding what was wrong. Anna had already run out to pounce on the coffin and slap her late husband, but Dominic was just in time to grab her and squeeze her in his arms. "What's going on?" was heard from the crowd. "Has she gone mad with grief? Poor girl. What happened?" People whispered or chattered in their voices, and Anna continued to scream in her brother's arms. It seemed to her that she had learned not just that she had tested positive for HIV, but that she was going to die tomorrow, and she would die because of her husband's betrayal. No, it was more than betrayal. If he were alive, he could be condemned for what he did. I mean, prosecuted, but he's already dead. "I hate him. I hate him," Anna said, pressing her face into her brother's chest. "I hate him." Dominic took her aside so that no one could hear her words. They stood 20 meters away from everyone else, and she continued to cry as she suddenly noticed a familiar face. She had seen this woman before, but where? Anna frantically tried to remember who it was, but the woman had spotted her too, so she decided to make a quick getaway so she wouldn't be spotted by anyone else. It was her. Anna remembered as she watched the stranger walk away. Who is she? It's his ex-girlfriend, the one who infected him. I saw her in the picture. Anna rushed after her, but her brother grabbed her again. "Let her go. Anna, you don't need this right now." She collapsed in his arms, realizing she no longer had the strength to resist. More than anything, she wanted to leave this place, forget about the wake, her family, and friends. To tell everyone to go to hell. "Could we not go to the cafeteria?" she asked her brother, looking pleadingly into his eyes. "Anna, just half an hour, okay, then we'll leave." "I don't want to. I don't want to go either, but we have to. Will you be patient? I can't take it anymore." "At least try. I know it's hard for you. Dominique, you have no idea. I'm sorry for your loss, but not for his death. You know what I mean. It's like you're burying me. No, I'm just sorry for what happened. You'll see a doctor, you'll get treatment, you'll live a long time. It's not over." "I don't believe that for some reason. I try to believe it with all my heart. I'm not going in there," she said, looking at the ceremony. "We'll stand here." He agreed, but after a minute the mother-in-law came to them. "Anna, let's go. They're going to lower it now," she said insistently. All this time she was watching her daughter-in-law and was terribly angry with her. It is necessary such rudeness. She behaved at the funeral like a mad woman. It was strange for her to see her daughter-in-law behaving like that. As far as Julian knew, the children lived well, loved each other, and now she had that look in her eyes. Her mother-in-law didn't understand what was wrong. "I'll stay here," Anna said idly. "No, you're coming with me." Julian answered and grabbed her arm, but immediately she felt Dominique's hand on her elbow. "Don't touch your sister. It's a disgrace. Can't you give my son a proper burial?" contemptuously through her mother-in-law. Anna could not stand it and hissed, "Your son died because he was HIV infected. He gave me this disease too. If you want to bury him with all the honors, then go ahead, and I don't care. I don't care if they throw him off a cliff." Julian just slammed her eyes shut in surprise. She seemed to forget how to breathe for a second. Her feet against her led her away from her unreasonable daughter-in-law, who dared to slander her favorite son so unmercifully. In the eyes of the mother-in-law froze silent horror. Seeing her, Alice guessed that Anna could not stand it and told the truth. Alice walked over to her mother and took her under the elbow as if trying to comfort her. When it was over and people were crowding toward the bus, her father-in-law walked over to Anna and told her very quietly, "Julian asked that you not go to the wake. I don't know what happened between you two there, but..." Anna didn't let him finish. "I didn't feel like it." She left and walked in the other direction, getting farther away from the bus with each step. Dominic followed her. For about 10 minutes they just walked and were silent, and then she sat down on the pavement and burst into tears. Emotions overpowered her. "Dominic, am I going to die now?" "I already said no. You will live," soothed her brother. "But what kind of life is that? I wanted children so much. And you can still have more." I Googled it. He knew his sister had always loved babies. When they were still babies, she often fiddled with the littlest ones at playgrounds. She was one of those women who was literally made for motherhood. "I want a drink," she said quietly. Dominic called a cab and drove the sister home. They bought a bottle of cognac and some food at the store near the house because her refrigerator was almost empty. Sitting in the kitchen with her brother, Anna was glad that she did not have to sit at the wake now and look into the eyes of her parents-in-law and Alice. "I wish they had not come to say goodbye, but had gone home at once," she said aloud, though it seemed to her that she had only thought it. "They might stay the night. Uncle Norman's driving. Maybe he won't drink. He'd already had a drink here before everyone left. It's a shame." Anna's parents were surprised not to see their daughter at her husband's wake. Amanda looked at her husband as if trying to ask him what was wrong, but he just shrugged. "Julian, do you know where my Anna is?" she asked, walking over to her sister-in-law. "I don't know," she heard a cold answer. "You brought up your daughter badly." "What are you talking about?" "That." "No, if you said that, you better explain," Amanda insisted, glaring at her opponent. "On a day like this, my mother-in-law couldn't take it, and to slander my boy like that. Do you have any idea what your soul said? She said that my Harry had HIV, and that's why he died. She also said that he infected her, but that's a lie." "What?" Amanda asked, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" Norman was standing nearby and heard everything, as did everyone else in the dining room. "Mother, what are you talking about?" he asked his wife. "I heard what I heard. Warmed the snake on your chest, and it stung on a day like this." "Choose your words," growled Anna's father. "You're talking about our daughter, and you don't yell at my wife." Norman shouted and grabbed the matchmaker by the chest, began to shake him, as if trying to shake him out of his soul, but he was not confused and put his fist right in his eye. The men started fighting. Harry's friends tried to break them up, but they got hit a couple times too. Julian ran up, trying to pull her husband away from Archie, but Norman inadvertently pushed her and knocked her to the floor. Then Amanda came over, but not too close, and asked tearfully, "Archie, stop all this outrage." It was as if Archie woke up from a dream and backed away. He got off Norman and let him go, and he crawled to his wife, who was still lying on the floor, trying to get up. Alice tried to help her mother, but Julian had gotten so fat lately that it was not easy to lift her. "Damn you all to hell," she yelled in frustration. "Your whole family. My son is gone, and you're doing this. How the hell can you people be here?" The wake was over before it could begin. They didn't even have time to drink a glass for the deceased, but everyone was fighting. Archie definitely went to one of the tables, drank 50 grams, and said loudly, "God rest his soul." Then he took his wife under his arm and led her out of the dining room. They called a cab and drove to Anna's house. It was necessary to find out whether all this was true or not. When they arrived, they saw their grown-up children sitting at the same table and drinking brandy. Yes, This is not the kind of sight that loving parents dream of, but now it seemed quite appropriate. Pour one for me too, Archie asked his son. A little for me too, said Amanda. Anna, is it true? It's true, replied the daughter sadly and cried. Her mother looked at her with such sympathy, her daughter just couldn't stand it. Amanda came closer and hugged her tightly, then said softly, Don't worry, it's not over yet. They sat and talked for a long time trying to figure out how this happened, but they never found any answers. 2 hours later, Anna's father-in-law, who had been drinking heavily, showed up at her apartment. Apparently, the wake had gone according to plan, although without a few extra people. Alice stood behind, shamefully lowered her eyes. She was angry at her sister-in-law, but in some ways she understood her. Anna opened the door silently and stepped back a little, allowing them to enter because their things were still in the apartment. Julian only gave her a disdainful look and went to her room to get her bag. She had brought her things with her to change, for she planned to stay here for the night. She had her husband's purse on the table in the living room with his driver's license and other documents in it. I'm sorry, said Alice, looking over her father's shoulder. You're apologizing too. Her father growled at her, and then looked at his daughter-in-law with such a fierce hatred that she felt uncomfortable. Dad, it's all true, only answered his daughter. What difference does it make? He said dryly. At that moment, Juliana came out of the living room with her belongings, and then Harry's parents and sister went to the hotel to spend the night. Her friends left without even saying goodbye to Anna, but she wasn't too upset about it. The people she wanted to see were there for her. Her parents stayed with Anna for 2 more days, and then they went home. She asked them to. She promised that she would definitely go to the hospital and start treatment. Dominic stayed with her for about a week, and then went home too. The only thing that bothered him at that moment was his sister's new addiction. Not a single evening was without alcohol. He thought it was her way of drowning her sorrows, but he was afraid she would continue to drink, and that was bad enough. Anna, stop drinking, okay? He asked her before he left. Yes, that's it. It's prohibition now. Tomorrow I'll go to the hospital, she promised. But as soon as the evening came, she felt heavy again, and she went to the store for another dose of sedatives. She didn't go to the hospital the next day, and she didn't go a week later either. It seemed to her that it was bearable, that there was still time. She wanted some control over her emotions. Alcohol helped with that, she thought, but soon she didn't notice how she became addicted to the green snake. At first she drank only in the evenings, but then she started to drink in the morning. At work, she took a month's vacation at her own expense. She drank the whole month. There was money her parents had given for her husband's funeral and her brother, and Harry's friends too. Some of it she spent, but some of it was left over. At some point, she got bored drinking alone at home, so Anna went to a bar. There were so many people there. Some were having fun. Some were sad, like her, but it was surprisingly pleasant to be among people, even though they were strangers. Anna was a pretty young woman. Even a month's alcoholic haze had not affected her appearance. Apparently, youth was to blame. If she were 30 or 40 years old, there would have been traces of drunkenness on her face, but not so, fresh as a rose. No wonder that after a few minutes some man sat down to her. "Hi, do you miss me?" he asked. "No, I'm bored," she confessed honestly, having already had a couple of drinks. "Can I keep you company? It's not busy here," she replied indifferently. "You're beautiful?" "I know. Can I buy you a drink?" "Go ahead." They hardly spoke, but a few more shots literally knocked Anna off her feet. I wish she'd stayed home. She would have just crawled to bed, as usual, and fallen asleep, but she had to get home somehow. Her new acquaintance's name was Max. He was nice and sweet all night. He told her things, but she didn't really listen to him. It was just nice to have someone around, but then she was lost in a fog again, coming to her senses from time to time. "Where are we going?" she asked, realizing she was sitting in the car. "To my place." "I don't want to." "We can go to your place. Take me home, please." "Where do you live?" She gave me an address. That bar was not far from her house, but they had already traveled far enough. "I don't want to go back. You're going home tomorrow." "Max, it's better for you if you take me home." "Threatening me?" He smiled. "Don't worry, I won't do anything you don't ask." Anna closed her eyes for a second and fell back into some strange eclipse. When she came to herself again, she was lying on the sofa in his apartment, and Max was sitting against it, sipping whiskey from a cut glass. "Where am I?" "You're at my place. I want to go home. And you will soon." He put his glass on the table and walked over to her, sat down on the couch and smiled. "But first, we'll get to know each other a little better." Anna wanted to say she didn't want to, but didn't have time to do it. A single slap knocked her out again, and when she woke up, she realized what had happened. It would have been better to stay home. She was cursing herself so much. "I hope you at least had the sense to put a rubber band on." "What did you have to do?" he asked mockingly. "Well, yes, I have HIV." Anna just answered, not knowing what was waiting for her next. Hearing Anna's words, Max's face changed as if he had gone mad. He was so angry that he could not control himself. The blows came one after another, while he called her the last words. She was terrified. The pain was so intense that she stopped thinking. When he dragged her by the leg out of his apartment, Anna had already lost consciousness. She woke up in the street not far from his house, but she had no idea where she was. It was dawn, not a soul around. Her jeans and her bag were lying next to her, and after rummaging through them, she found her cell phone and called a cab by geolocation. The car arrived 10 minutes later. Once home, Anna tried to make sense of everything that had happened. She was sorry for what had happened, but at least she had warned the man that there could be consequences. Strangely, she felt only her own guilt, forgetting that he had taken her against her will. She would have been better off staying home, she said to herself as she showered. She'd better stay home. That story had discouraged her from drinking every night. When the bruises on her face and body had faded a little, Anna went to the hospital to find out about HIV treatment. A polite infectious disease specialist explained her treatment plan in detail and prescribed the necessary medications. "We need to take additional tests. I will write you directions, and then we will start. Okay?" "Yes, of course," she replied, collecting various papers from the table. The same day she took the tests because she had not eaten or drunk since the morning, and then she went home. The vacation at work was already over, but she took a sick leave because in such a state it was impossible to go to work. Her face was bruised and her body was breaking. At the clinic where she took the sick leave, she did not tell about the reason for her beatings, so no one reported her to the police. A week later, she received a call back from the hospital where she was being treated for HIV, and the doctor scheduled another appointment. When Anna arrived, he told her some not so pleasant news. "You are pregnant." She looked at the doctor with horror, as if he had told her she would die tomorrow. "There's no need to be so frightened. If we start treatment right now, you have a good chance of having a healthy baby." "How can that be?" "It's early in the pregnancy. It could work out." "No, I want an abortion." "It's up to you. But if you want to do it just because you're HIV positive, don't." Anna left the doctor's office dazed and hopeful at the same time. She didn't care at all how the child was conceived. She had always wanted to be a mother and never understood women who killed their babies. If the doctor assured her it would work, why not give it a try? After 2 days of hard thinking, she made the decision to have this baby. The sorrowful thoughts she had while drinking screamed that she could never be happy with another man again. No one would want her, and she could not do to someone what her husband had done to her. After informing her doctor of her decision, Anna began treatment, carefully following all his instructions. She was 2 months pregnant when her mother-in-law called her unexpectedly. Without even asking how things were going, she put her in front of the fact. "We are our son's heirs. Soon you'll get a summons to court. The apartment will have to be divided or you can pay us our shares." Anna almost choked with indignation, but she was not confused. "What apartment do you mean?" "The one you're living in now." "Really? Have you lost your memory? It's my apartment. Bought during the marriage, so it is common," insisted mother-in-law. "The apartment was bought by my parents. That won't hold up in court." "Really? Well, let's go to court," just replied daughter-in-law and hung up the phone. Of course, she should have told Juliana that the apartment was not only bought by her parents, but also formalized a gift, so nothing in laws will not break, but she did not do it. Let her mom embarrass herself when she goes to court. Harry had his own apartment, but when they married, He sold it because he was going to live with Anna for the rest of his life. He invested the money in the business of a friend of his, but he went bust and the money was gone. Julian had nothing to count on, but she didn't know it yet. And everything would be fine. But the conversation with her mother-in-law reminded Anna that she had not yet found the answers to those questions that tormented her when she was drinking like hell. Hoping that Alice was not yet aware of her mother's scam, Anna called her. "Hey, do you have a minute?" "Hi, yes, how are you?" Sister-in-law asked. "I'm fine, I've started to heal. I hope to live a little longer." "That's good. Did you want something?" "Yes, I was wondering if you had the number or address of the woman Harry lived with before me. I know she lives in the same village as our parents. I'm near your house right now, by the way. Can I drop by?" Anna was a little taken aback at the suggestion, but agreed. 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Alice looked either guilty or upset. "Hi, can you let me in?" she just asked. "Hi, come in." "Anna, I wanted to apologize to you for our parents. They still don't believe what happened, but I'm afraid to imagine how much they hurt you with their behavior." "Apology accepted, but only from you. No offense," replied the daughter-in-law, or rather already ex, or are they not exes? "Would you like some tea?" "Yes, that would be great." They went to the kitchen. Anna made tea and took out of the refrigerator recently bought pie with poppy seeds. "So why do you want this, Selena?" Alice asked, taking a bite. "I have questions. I can't live with myself until I find the answers." "What makes you think she can help you?" "Because I saw her at the funeral." "What?" My sister-in-law looked very surprised. "But how did she know? Who told her?" "That's one of the questions." That's very strange. I also think that even after we got married, Harry kept in touch with her." "But why?" "That's another one of the questions. And the others?" "I don't understand why he didn't tell me. I don't believe he was that selfish. And even if he was, shouldn't the doctors have told me? Isn't it recorded anywhere?" "I don't know." "Was he treated at all? What was he taking?" I have 1,000 questions, and I feel like this Selena should know the answers. "But what makes you think they were in touch?" "I don't know. I used to ignore it, but sometimes he'd hide his phone when someone was texting. It was kind of casual. It didn't stick out. I didn't think much of it then, but now. If she hadn't come to the funeral, I wouldn't have connected it all together, but now." Alice thought about her words for a moment, then suggested, "Anna, I have a car. Let's go to her together. I have questions now too." After about an hour or a little more, Alice's car pulled up to the village where her parents lived. She decided to take a little detour so as not to pass her house. On the road, the girls were silent most of the time. What else was there to discuss? Neither of them knew if they'd ever find that Selena at home, but they could at least leave a note for her to call back. It was her day off. She might not be working. Anna went to the door of the house first and knocked on it confidently. A boy of about 14 years of age opened the door. "Hello, who are you?" he asked, looking at the strangers. "Is your mom home?" "Mom," the boy shouted and stepped away from the door. Soon a young and very pretty woman came out. Blonde hair, green eyes, slim and trim. She didn't look sick at all. In fact, neither did Anna now. "Son, go and look after your brother and sister, please," Selena asked, realizing perfectly well who had come to see her. "Good afternoon, what can I do for you?" "Can we talk?" Anna asked, drilling her with her gaze. "Not here. Wait a few minutes, I'll be right out. There's a place nearby." Alice nodded, and Anna just turned around and walked to the car. A few minutes later, Selena came out and got in with them. "Drive straight ahead. Do you know where the gazebos are near the pond?" "Yes," Alice answered and started the car. When they were comfortably seated in one of the gazebos at a wooden table, Selena asked first, "Why did you come here?" "I have questions," Anna answered, trying to remain calm. She was pounding inside for some reason, but she couldn't understand what was wrong. Why is the sky blue? Who will be the next president? Was it true what Vanga said? Selena joked inappropriately. More simply, how did you know about the funeral? Alice sat silent for the time being. She wasn't comfortable either. "I happened to meet Norman the night before the funeral. He told me Harry was dead. I wanted to at least get a glimpse of him and see him off." Did you love him that much? We become good friends lately. Oh yeah. Okay, let's say we were. Do you know if he's in treatment or not? Are you sick too? I'm asking questions today, but yes, you can congratulate me. Selena looked at her sympathetically, smiled sadly, and said, I won't congratulate you, but I will answer your questions. Harry didn't want to go to the hospital, even a private one, but he was taking tests. What's that? Where? I'm a lab technician. I gave him the test myself. I've done them every 3 months since the day he said he wanted to live with me, no matter what. How come he knew you were HIV positive but still wanted to be with you? Anna asked. Because he is an educated man and knows that HIV is not transmitted in the home, and we were very careful about other things. And yet he got sick. It happens too. There's no 100% guarantee, but Harry thought there was. When he found out he was HIV positive, he said he didn't want to see me anymore and left. And then he came back 2 or 3 months later, I don't remember, and asked me what he should do. I told him I could help him. With what? With tests and treatment. Are you a doctor? No, but I know where to get the right drugs. Did you steal from the hospital? No, there are other opportunities. Are you talking about the black market? Anna was surprised. Something like that. There are people who supply medicines for all tastes. You just have to know where to find them. And did you? Yes. And when he told you he was married, did it occur to you to tell me? Anna asked resentfully. I wanted to, but I didn't. He asked me not to, then he threatened me, said he'd put me away for doing tests on HIV-infected people without the hospital's knowledge, that he'd rat out my connections with dealers. Vested interests everywhere, right? He promised he'd be extra careful. Plus, if someone's in treatment, it's almost impossible to infect anyone. I know that. Oh yeah? Well, he got sick first, and then I did. And I'm sorry you didn't have the same choice he did. Sorry? Well, did you know that he wanted kids, so we didn't use birth control for the last 2 years? Selena's face stretched with bewilderment. That can't be true. Why can't it be? He had a vasectomy when he found out about his diagnosis. He traveled to another region to some private clinic. A vasectomy. Anna blinked in bewilderment. Then it turns out. I don't believe it. In what? Alice couldn't stand it. Then it turns out that he wanted to infect me on purpose. But why? I don't know that. Selena answered. I never thought he could do that, but he's been very strange lately. What do you mean? It's like he started taking something, and he hasn't come to pick up his medication a few times. I'd call, and he'd say he'd gotten it somewhere else. Then he'd come back again. I was worried about him. That's very humane. I'll give you that. Anna, I'm really sorry. I was just trying to help him. I didn't want him to get worse, but after he sold the apartment and blew his money, he got kind of depressed. Anna lowered her eyes and stared at the table for a few minutes. The monstrous thought occurred to her that her husband had decided to infect her in order to bind her to himself finally, so that she would not end up on the street if she happened to find out about everything. But could it have been true? It was unlikely that even Celine knew the answers to those questions. How long have you been on your own? Anna asked. For 8 years now, a little more. As you can see, I live. Aren't you afraid for the children? No, I know exactly how to avoid infection. I got infected when I already had children. Lucky, Anna said, but it sounded sad. One could hardly guess from her appearance now that she was pregnant. Though Anna had no plans to hide it, she just didn't think they were the right people to be honest about it, and she didn't want to answer the question of who the father was. Do you need help? Selena asked. With what? Doing fake tests or getting drugs? Thanks, I'm not proud. I went to the hospital. You did the right thing. I urged him to register too, but Harry didn't want to hear about it. I wonder why? The girls asked in unison. I think it's because of his father. Well, I guess it's your father, Selena admitted. What does our dad have to do with it? Alice asked in surprise. Anna also did not understand anything, only stared intently at the blonde, with whom her late husband was once in love. Are you sure you want to know? Selena asked. Yes, I do. Harry met me for a reason. I was first courted by your father. I don't know why he liked me. We met by chance. He started stalking me. He was literally stalking me. I tried to tell him I wasn't interested, but he wouldn't let it go. Somehow Harry found out about it. He came into my life too, but unlike Norman, I liked him immediately. I didn't find out they were related until much later. Are you saying that my father wanted to cheat on my mother with you? Yes, and I'm afraid that's what made Harry interested. He wouldn't back down even when I told him I had HIV. He told me he loved me and was there for me, for better or for worse. Now I think he wasn't being completely honest. He just wanted to get his daddy away from me so mommy wouldn't be alone. Selena said it with such irony, purposely calling her parents diminutive words. Alice blinked perplexedly, trying to comprehend all of this. Was it all her father's fault? If he hadn't looked on the side, his brother wouldn't have gotten involved with Selena, wouldn't have gotten sick and infected Anna. Obviously, the chain is too complicated. But did you love my brother? Very much. Selena answered cautiously, glancing at Anna. And have you two been in touch in the last few months? Yes, I wrote to him several times. He didn't come for his medicine again. I wanted to bring it myself, but he sent me away. He told me not to call him anymore and stay out of his life. Why? Did he say anything to you? All I know is that at first the medications I got him were making him feel better, but then he started to notice side effects and it pissed him off. Anna remembered how her husband had complained several times about liver pain, and he had also had problems with potency lately. It would seem, who doesn't? But he was always very angry about the latter. Alice sat in a kind of bewilderment. The little child inside her was slowly dying. It always seemed to her that the parents love each other, that they almost have the strongest family in the world, but it turned out that the father was quite different. It felt as if Alice had never really known him. Can I ask how you got infected yourself? She asked Selena. At work, accidentally. I was assigned a student intern in the lab. She was a cranky little thing. She helped. Contaminated blood got in my eyes. I still wonder how you can be so crooked and dumb, especially when you choose a profession like that. The most interesting thing is that not even a drop got on her, and after a while I was convinced that I had also sailed. I started treatment. I always thought that only drug addicts or promiscuous people got HIV. Oh, you don't even realize how many people with HIV there are among the medical staff who also got infected absolutely accidentally. There are many people like Anna who were infected by their husbands. And by the way, some of them, unlike Harry, don't even realize they're sick for a long time. When they find out, they shock not only themselves, but the whole family. People with HIV do not advertise their status. They live under a veil of lies because they do not want to get the status of untouchables. Although in reality they are just like everyone else, only with the presence of the virus in the body. We're talking about the ones who get treated, not the ones who give up or carry the disease further, spreading it around. Did Norman come on to you again when he found out you'd broken up with Harry? Anna asked. No, I think it was just natural squeamishness. Like a father and son shouldn't share the same woman. It's a bit much. Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know if I should talk, Selena said carefully. About what? Alice asked suspiciously. Are you sure you want to know? Yes, I'm not surprised about anything anymore. Now your father has a girlfriend on the side too. Wait, I'm not sure I want to hear that. Alice said fearfully and then thought for a moment and still asked, how do you know? I recently saw him at the mall with a woman in her 40s, and it's definitely not your mother. What's the big deal? Does your father often buy clothes for other women? Okasana asked sympathetically. Alice lowered her eyes. Was the truth really too cruel sometimes? Or had her father always been like that? I think that's enough for today, Alice said and got up from the table. She left the gazebo and walked to the pond. She sat down on the bank near the pond and looked at the water for a few minutes to calm herself. She had once loved this place very much. Several times they had come here with her brother and father to fish and swim. It was a little farther downstream, but the pond was the same. When Alice left, Selena put her card on the table. Here, you don't know it yet, but sometimes HIV medication is not enough for everyone. Sometimes they bring in drugs that cause too many side effects. If you need good meds, just give me a call. If you can't use the phone yourself, you can help others someday. Trust me, I've been in this system a long time. I know what I'm talking about. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Anna asked. Why? For helping people. Do you know how much the tests cost? And this is just the beginning. And okay, you make good money, but there are people who already live below the poverty line. They can't afford a lot of things that you can easily afford. Are you some kind of Robin Hood? The girl asked unhappily. I already told you that I don't steal anything. The drugs that are sold on the black market are stolen before they even reach the hospitals. Some people make a business out of it. No one will ever get them because they wear such expensive suits that the average person has to work 5 years, if not more, for. Selena was not a stupid woman. Of course, it was hard to guess from Anna's appearance that she was pregnant if she didn't automatically press her hands to her stomach every now and then. Having been pregnant 3 times, Selena couldn't help but notice it. She didn't dare to ask right away, but when Alice left them, she did say, "What's the due date?" "What?" Anna was surprised. "I'm not stupid. It's not Harry's baby." "No." "What's the time frame?" 2 months. I hope the baby comes out healthy. It won't be easy, but try to do everything the doctors say. I think Harry did it because he started skipping his meds, or he's been drinking pacifiers." Pacifiers? Anna didn't understand. Yes, some dealers sell the drug cheaper, making up all sorts of fairy tales, but in fact they offer nothing that treats HIV. "The more I listen to you, the scarier it gets," she confessed. "Don't be afraid. People with HIV live a long time, and you're going to be a mom soon. Harry told me you always wanted children." "Yes, I have. And for years I tried to get pregnant by a man who had a vasectomy." Anne replied sadly. "If you wanted to get pregnant, why didn't you go to the doctors to get checked out?" Selena asked gently. "Do you know many women of my age who run to the hospital if it doesn't work on the first try?" "Yes, I guess you're right." Alice walked into the gazebo, wiping the remnants of tears from her face. She looked sadly at both women and suggested, "Well, shall we go home?" Alice drove Selena home first, and then they drove on. Anna was silent for a long time, staring at the road, but then she couldn't stand it. She could see how sad Alice was. She didn't want any more confusion in her life. "Tell my mother I have the apartment by gift. Let her not waste money on courts and lawyers." "What?" My sister-in-law was surprised. Juliana called, said that she wants to get her share of the inheritance after Harry's death. "Are you serious? Would you think of something like that on purpose?" Anna snorted. "I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. Her mother's a grief-stricken mess." "Is she suffering?" "Yes, she cried for a month, almost never left the house. She's in a rage phase now, I guess since she's taking it out on you. I'm sorry about that." "Al, stop apologizing for something you didn't do." Alice was silent for a moment, then asked, "Do you blame me for not telling you?" "I used to, but then I thought of myself in your shoes. If my brother had told me he was clean, I would have believed him too. I guess that's how gullible we are." "I really thought so." "I know." By the time they got to Anna's house, it was getting dark outside. The air was cooler, but it was more pleasant than not. "How about a glass of wine?" Alice suggested. "No, I don't drink anymore." Anna answered honestly. "Not at all. I almost drank myself to death when I found out about HIV. I don't want to anymore. Life has taught me something, and I don't advise you to drink alcohol. It usually ends badly." "Okay. Thanks for taking me to Selena's," Anna said as she got out of the car. "You're welcome. Don't say hi to your parents," jokingly said daughter-in-law and went to her driveway. Alice drove home. She barely survived the night, and in the early morning, she went to her parents to have a serious talk with them. At home, she found only her mother. Her father had already gone somewhere, though it was strange, since Sunday was a day off. No, I guess it wasn't strange, considering what she'd learned yesterday. "Is Dad coming soon?" "I don't know. He doesn't report to me." Julian replied grudgingly, rubbing her eyes. "Does he often run away from home like that?" "What makes you think he runs away?" Mom didn't understand. "He must have gone fishing again this morning." "Shit, it's that nuisance again." "What's wrong?" "I don't know. My eyes see and don't see. I don't know what to do." "Have you seen an eye doctor?" "Yes, he said it's age." "They're always like that. You're always fooling around. What do you want? It's age. I'm seeing worse and worse." Julian had been complaining a lot about her health lately. She had a sore throat or bronchitis or some other disease. Alice was silent for a while, gathering courage, and then said, "I was talking to Anna the other day." Juliana turned sharply, almost dropped the mug with tea from her hands. "Why are you hanging out with that trash?" "Mom, she's not trash. And she told me something. You're gonna sue her over the apartment. I don't want her to enjoy life after she killed my son." "Are you serious? What does Anna have to do with this? Who do you think infected him?" "She did. She's the only one living and enjoying life, and my son is in a coffin." "Mom, he infected her. Did she feed you such stories? Trust her more, or don't you trust my motherly instincts?" "Mom, it's not your gut, it's your anger. You need to blame someone, but Anna was a victim of her own circumstances." "What are you trying to say? Then where did Harry get this disease?" I was about to scream at my mother. "Do you remember Selena?" Alice asked, and Julian sat up in surprise. "What?" "She's HIV positive. I didn't want to tell you, but I think it's the only way you'll stop hating Anna." "Are you saying that she infected my son on purpose? Is that Selena?" "He knew about her diagnosis when he went to bed with her, from the first time." "She told you that?" "No normal man would do something like that. No one who cares about life." And at that moment, Alice realized that she would have to tell the whole truth to make her mother believe her, but how hard it was to make this decision. And suddenly she realized something. If her father cheated on her from time to time, he could have brought some disease into the house too. Maybe Mom's vision and health problems had another hidden cause. And her head has been a mess lately, although it's too early to write her off as an old woman. "Mom, please sit down. I have something to tell you. It won't be pleasant to hear, but you must know. If it's unpleasant, I don't want to hear it. What if it helps to fix the problem with your eyesight?" I tried to interest her daughter. "What would you know about that?" Julian sat down at the table, though she had no desire to drink tea. "Mom, Harry started dating Selena because of Dad." "What? What's Norman got to do with it?" Her mother snorted unhappily. "Mom, have you ever noticed your father getting colder or staying late after work?" "What are you saying? He was never warm as a pie, but he was always a good husband, and all men linger after work, whether it's for a beer or a chat." "Not all of them, Mom. Okay, I don't know how to make this any easier. Dad cheats on you sometimes, and he was in love with Selena. Harry started dating her to talk some sense into Dad. That's why he wanted to marry her." "Are you listening to yourself?" Julianne hissed at her daughter. "I understand you're angry. It's a perfectly normal reaction, but think about it. What else would make Harry do that? You said yourself that no normal person would think of it." Julian covered her eyes with her hands, trying to quiet the throbbing pain in her head that came after her daughter's words. She'd actually lied. She had suspected her husband of infidelity for years, but she had no concrete proof. And who cares? Yeah, sometimes men want fresh meat. Everybody does. Except Julian never thought their children would know about something like this. And now her daughter's words were hurting her heart. "Okay, but what do my eyes have to do with it?" Alice lowered her eyes shamefully, then looked at her mother. "I may be wrong, but I saw him in one show. As a man had hidden syphilis, he did not know about his disease for many years. He went to the doctors when the headaches started, and he almost went blind." Yes, Julianne's headaches had been getting worse lately, but her daughter's words still seemed like outright nonsense. "This is too much. Do you even hear what you're saying? It's not hard to check. All you have to do is take some tests. You don't have to do it if you want, but don't say I didn't warn you." The thought that her husband might have given her such a disease made Julianne's head ache even more. She felt her blood pressure rising as if her brain was about to puddle. "Give me a blood pressure pill," Mom asked. "Do you want me to go to the hospital with you?" suggested her daughter. Alice was far from medicine, so she hoped that Mom was really sick with something else. She managed to persuade Julian to go to a private hospital and take some tests. She checked herself just in case. The results came back a few days later. No one expected this, but by some miracle her daughter was right. Julian's eyes widened with indignation when she saw the name of her disease. She never expected such a thing from her husband because she had no proof except her guesses. But this paper confirmed everything. Waiting for her husband from work, she shoved the results right in his face and made a showdown. What the hell does that mean? What the hell does it mean? She yelled at Norman. Looking into his dead eyes, she was once again convinced that it was all his fault. But it can't be. I've been cured, and I didn't sleep with you then. This is not HIV. Syphilis can be contracted in the home. Couldn't you tell me? I would have washed the whole house, boiled all the dishes and bedding. Yeah, and you would have told me to go to hell. I know you. And if you do, why didn't you use your head? Have you no conscience at all? What if I was blind? What if I died? Do you know how long I'd have to be treated? I could have infected our children. Julianne shouted when suddenly she realized, and Egorek died because of you. When she heard her own voice, she sat down in surprise. She had been scolding Anna all this time, and it turned out that it was all her precious husband's fault. No, she could not forgive that. Get out, she screamed at the top of her voice. Get out of this house. I don't want to see you again. Get out. Julian didn't even let her husband pack his things. She threw him out in what he wore when he came home from work. A couple days later, Alice came in, helped her mother unload her father's things into a traveling suitcase and took it to him. It turned out that Norman had already been taken in by his new girlfriend by then. Alice took a few more days off work to comfort her mother a little. It seemed that she was caught in some monstrous whirlpool of events, developing in the most incomprehensible directions. Shock, horror, longing. Emotions overwhelmed both women. Julianne was shocked that after so many years of marriage, now she was alone and not needed by anyone. She hadn't expected it to end like this. Mom, don't you want to call Anna and apologize? Her daughter once asked her. God will forgive. The mother just answered. Anna was very worried about her pregnancy, HIV, plus months of drinking before conception, not to mention how she got pregnant. She could only hope that by some miracle the baby would be born healthy. She followed all the doctor's appointments, complied with all their recommendations. Everything seemed to be going well, but when she was 8 months pregnant, something happened that she did not expect at all. When she went to another appointment with an infectious disease specialist, it turned out that the medications she was prescribed were out of stock, and she could not interrupt the course. Well, what can I do? We're waiting for another shipment. This isn't Washington. This happens all the time. Did you have a stash? The doctor asked dejectedly. What stash? You told me yourself that there would be medicine. You are just new. My patients are already used to the fact that sometimes there are such interruptions. What am I supposed to do? Wait, there should be a shipment in a couple of days. And if they don't, it will, you have to believe. Anna, like many others, had never been treated for HIV before, so she did not realize that these people live in fear, and they are afraid not only to die, but also to go untreated. After talking to one woman who was sitting under the office after the appointment, she learned that this happens quite often, about twice a year. You can buy medicines, but they cost a lot, and they are not always available. How do you cope? Anna asked her new acquaintance with horror. Sometimes I ask to be given pills with a reserve, but it does not always work. So that's what the doctor was talking about. Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. You want to live, but the state has to provide. Really? You think that's the only thing they're supposed to do, but they don't. But yes, it's very depressing. Anna was driving home, trying to figure out what to do, when suddenly she remembered Selena's card. She found it, even though I had to go through several purses, and then called her right away. Telling her what had happened, she hoped she could help. Text me the medications and dosages. I'll find out, replied Harry's ex. Thank you. I'll send a message now. Do you have anything right now? Yeah, for a couple days at the most. Why didn't you go to the doctor beforehand? You're pregnant. They would have given you one. I got caught up. I had things to do. I didn't know this could happen. Keep it in mind for the future. We need to stock up. Okay, wait. I'll call you when I know something. Anna was in shock. She didn't know what to do if even Selena couldn't help, but the phone rang in the evening. Come tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I'll be waiting for you. Did you find it? Yes, but take the money. It's not free. In the morning, Anna called a cab and went to her place. Selena had given her a supply of pills, but she had to pay a lot for them. In any case, it was better than nothing. because otherwise the baby could be born with HIV, and this should not be allowed. Anna thanked her for the medicine and then suddenly said, "I'm sorry for what I said to you last time. Now I understand more about why you're doing this. Some people really need help. Just don't give out my contacts. It's a China business. I don't want to go to jail for a few years for that help." "I understand." A week later, the doctor called and said the drugs had arrived. Anna went to the hospital and replenished the supplies, but in her heart, she was glad that now she had at least a small insurance, a stash for a rainy day. And while Anna was happy for herself, she realized that there were probably people who weren't as lucky as she was. They could go without treatment for a week or more, and that's not safe for their health. The thought that the medication could be gone for a month or more made her even more scared. She could only hope that it would never happen. The time for delivery was approaching. The closer the day got, the more the tension inside grew. Negative. Anna read the test results of her newborn daughter. She knew, of course, that it was not yet an indicator, but it was at least the first step. The first analysis was done when the baby was first born. Anna gave birth to a baby girl and named her Vera. She was very hopeful that thanks to the therapy, she had not transmitted her misfortune to her daughter, but she could not be sure of it yet. Anna had a cesarean section on the due date. When she saw her daughter for the first time in her life, she realized that she would love her whether she was born sick or not. But to her surprise, Veronica did not have any abnormalities, except that she was born very small, only 2.5 kilograms, but this is not an indicator. And Anna also had a great desire to live longer because she wanted to see all the significant moments in the life of her daughter. She wanted to hear her first word and see her first steps, to take her to the first grade, and then walk on her graduation. She dreamed of getting her daughter married and babysitting her grandchildren. She did not know how real it was, but the doctors convinced her that everything would happen if she did not stop treatment. When Veronica turned 1 year old, she had another HIV test, which was negative again. Anna rejoiced like a child, hoping that the next one would be the same. Once at the next appointment with an infectious disease specialist, she was again left without medication. There was a small stash at home, but in any case, this situation every time inspired silent horror. She came out with such a distressed face that the young man sitting under the office immediately guessed what was wrong and asked, "No medicine again?" She only shook her head, watching his eyes darken. "How many can you do?" he asked. "I'm shocked. I have 3 days left. And you?" "A little more." "Did they say when it would be?" Anna shook her head again, then sighed heavily and answered, "They promised me no more than a week." "Shit, I won't last that long." She thought for a moment and then offered, "Would you like some coffee?" The young man even smiled. He thought he had taken a liking to the pretty brunette. This had not happened to him very often lately. In the cafe they got to talking. Anna found out that he got infected when he had a blood transfusion. The guy's not a drug addict or a streetwalker. Stuart, that's his name, suspected something was wrong when he started losing weight for no reason. He went to the hospital, took tests, and hello. Thankfully, he was not dating anyone at the time, did not have time to reward anyone with his disease, and as soon as he found out, he stopped thinking about women altogether. He did not want to hide, but as soon as he mentioned HIV, everyone ran away from him as if there was a fire. It's understandable though. Pluses, that's what people with HIV called each other. A lot of people were afraid to get involved with the minuses. They didn't want other people to get hurt because of them. Are you married? Not anymore. Divorced? Dead. Plus? Yes. And you're because of him? Yes. It's sad. Terrible, but we'll live, she said hopefully. Do they know at work? No. That's right. And your family? They're supportive. I'm lucky. They've all given up on me like I'm a leper. Even my parents don't talk to me. I'm sorry. Yes, you are. I have a daughter, Anna said with a smile. Stuart looked at her in surprise and smiled too. Plus, minus for now, but there will be more tests. That's great. How old is she? She's a year old, just over a year old. Where is she now? At home with my friend. You're a lucky girl, he said, not without a little envy. Anna thought for a moment and then decided, I know where to get some medicine. Are you serious? Yes, but it's a big secret. Of course it is. Will you help? I've got money. Write down what you need and your phone number. I'll find out. I'll find out. Okay. Stuart was so excited. A week of waiting was a furor. He simply wouldn't have enough pills if the situation didn't change. After taking his note, Anna went home, and from there she called Selena. The next morning she contacted the steward and told him that he could come to her for his medication in the afternoon. He arrived at about 7 in the evening, just after work. She handed him the package and took the money. As Stuart was about to leave, little Veronica suddenly came crawling into the hallway. She couldn't stomp very well, but she could crawl with incredible speed, and she had also learned to climb down from the couch, where her mother had left her with cushions. "Wow, what a cutie," said Stuart when he saw the baby. "What's her name?" "Veronica." "That's a good name." "Hi, Veronica." He turned to the girl and squatted down. Anna gave her a hand, and her daughter stood on her feet, came closer, and grabbed his knee. "Anna, can I?" he asked with a smile, and she nodded. Stuart grabbed the little girl in his arms and tossed her up slightly, and the girl laughed. Strong male arms, who wouldn't like that? Veronica liked men very much, but she'd only ever talked to her brother and Anna's father, and she obviously liked the black-browed Stuart because she was smiling at him with her almost toothless mouth. "How lucky you are," he said, looking at little Veronica. "Yes, she's my miracle." From that day on, Anna and Stuart became friends. For the first time, they sometimes walked together with Norman in the park or just around the city. Their relationship grew warmer every day. After 3 months, Stuart asked Anna out on a real date for the first time. They knew that dating minuses is unlikely to work out, but experiencing it all together is still better than nothing. After a few more months, Stuart offered Anna to live together. So and settled in one apartment, 2 lovers plus, and one small but very cute minus. When in a year and a half the girl's tests again showed a negative result, the doctor calmly exhaled. The hardest part is behind us. From Alice, Anna learned about the fact that her former mother-in-law for several weeks treated for the disease, which awarded her hubby. The girls did not stop communicating after Harry's death, even became friends. Having learned about the pregnancy, Alice was very happy, and when the baby was born, volunteered to be her godmother. Anna did not refuse. "I'll let it be good if the daughter will have another spare mom just in case." We cannot say that the future life of Anna and Stuart will be absolutely happy and beautiful, because there are still a lot of difficulties and surprises ahead, but still two survive easier than alone. And it's easier to raise a daughter when there are both parents, and Stuart volunteered to adopt Veronica right after they got married. The realization that she didn't have to go to work brought a happy smile to Juliana's face when she woke up. Stretching languidly, she opened her eyes and the smile immediately disappeared. Sighing sadly, she got out of bed and, throwing on a robe, wandered into the kitchen. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty. Are you going to have breakfast?" Emmeline asked. Julian answered, sitting down at the table. For 5 years, the two sisters had shared the apartment their parents had left them when they moved out of town. They got along well, but Juliana wanted to live separately and was looking forward to getting her new place finished. "He left a couple of hours ago," Emmeline said, turning on the kettle. "I see," she said with a heavy sigh. "Honestly, I don't understand you. Why do you need it?" Julian shrugged. They'd met Justin on the internet. He'd said he was looking for a relationship without commitment, which didn't suit a woman at all. Her 30th birthday was looming on the horizon, and she wanted to get married and have children. Why had she gone on a date with Justin? She liked him. She couldn't drink water off his face, but outwardly he was her ideal. And when the man smiled, she was simply speechless, so enchanted was she by his smile. It had been 2.5 months since they'd met on her property, and she knew absolutely nothing about him. Justin visited once, twice a week, bringing something delicious, followed by an amazing night that she thought about until the next time they met. In the mornings, he would often disappear before she woke up, only to be awakened when Emmeline wasn't home for Julian to close the door behind him. Unlike her sisters Lark, she liked to sleep longer. "How long has Austin been chasing you? And you keep turning your nose up at him," the sister went on. "First you were crying over Evan, and now this one. Regina, if a man says he needs it for health reasons, he's not going to do it. I like him. I don't like Austin. I'm not a racist, but it's just not my thing. I like Americans. Regina answered, rising from the table to pour tea. Here they are Russians, 4 years for the nose, neither here nor there. This at least honest. But what is the use? Emmeline sighed. They don't want to make any commitments. That's why I broke up with Ronald. When a man needs a woman, he won't go anywhere. Better no way than that. I don't know what's best. It's not good alone either, Julian said. We've got to keep moving. And you sit around waiting for your hero lover to call you and make you happy with his visit. I'm going to Meryl's house tonight. She promised to introduce me to a friend of her husband's, so I'm not expecting anything. Julian finished her tea and cake and glanced at her phone, which alerted her to an incoming message. Seeing who it was from, the woman rolled her eyes. Let me guess. Emmeline laughed. Austin's texting. Him. He's annoying. He's so annoying. I don't want to go to work because of him, and he's bothering me on the weekends. What's he saying? Emmeline asked, and her sister handed her the phone. When she read it, the woman smiled. Well, you should go. A man calls you to a restaurant. Unlike some people, your Justin's never taken you anywhere but the bunkhouse. A movie once, remember? Yeah, a lot. Maybe he's married. What's your answer to Austin? The usual no. If you like him so much, you'd hook up with him yourself. I don't mind if you keep him away from me. Oh yeah, let men chase me, not me chasing them. And you should eat less pie. You're already a tart. Emmeline looked at her sister. Yes, there were extra pounds, of course. Julian knew it well. But she could not deny herself sweets and pastries. I had to remind you of that. The woman rose from the table. No offense. It's just that I'm worried about you. And I can see that you're into this Justin guy. I mean, he's pretty good looking, but looks aren't everything. I hope Meryl's husband's friend turns out to be okay and things work out. What about you? You got a new romance in the works. Julian looked at her sister with a smile. I'm 6 years younger than you, so I have plenty of time to spare. She answered and looked at her watch. I'm going to get ready. Leslie and I are going shopping. When are you leaving? I'm gonna lie around a while. I won't be gone for a while. Julian came back into the room and plopped down on the bed. As soon as she closed her eyes, Justin's face and the images of the night before came into view, and goosebumps ran through her body. She'd enjoyed everything when she lived with Evan, but there hadn't been that kind of passion in their relationship to begin with. Evan, for 4 years, everything had been fine. They hadn't even fought, and Julian had painted pictures in her imagination of their future happy family life, until one day he suddenly stunned her with a conversation that turned everything upside down. Regina, we need to talk, he said that day, coming home from work. Looking into his eyes, she realized it all at once. Just yesterday, he hadn't looked that way, and suddenly in one day something had changed. It did not fit in her head because there was nothing that could lead to thoughts of breaking up the relationship. We should break up. Without beating around the bush, he said, averting his gaze as if ashamed and guilty. Why all of a sudden? Julian sat down across from him, and everything inside felt cold and his heart froze. It was like this. He looked at her again. It's not easy for me, and I don't want to talk about it. It's just the way it is, that's all. It's not your fault, it's all me. Well, if you say so, it's necessary, she said. I'll go pack my things. The woman got up from the chair, barely restraining herself from crying. You can tomorrow, not at night, he said, and the sympathy in his gaze hurt even more. Better now. Julian forced a smile out of herself and went to her room. How she'd sobbed when she got home, and then the lingering depression that Emmeline had worked long and hard to bring her out of. And what was most agonizing was that she had absolutely no idea why. 4 years of a relationship, happy and, as she thought, cloudless, suddenly shattered in a matter of minutes. Why? This question still sometimes rolled around in her mind because it's always easier when you know the truth, no matter what it is. And the unknown is deprived of peace. It had been a year already, and the memories of that relationship didn't hurt anymore. Julian had no desire to go to Meryl's house, and she hadn't even seen a picture of Willie. She hadn't even seen a picture of this William they wanted to introduce her to. But she intuitively felt that nothing would work out with him. This was far from her first introduction through friends, and nothing had ever stuck with anyone yet. Julian stepped outside, and almost immediately her shuttle bus pulled up. She sat down and stared out the window, deep in her thoughts. "Girl, what are you thinking about so seriously? Smile." She heard a voice nearby and turned her head. Next to her sat a man about her age. Without answering him, she looked out the window again. "How angry you are." He spoke again. "I'm the kind one." Julian replied, somewhat irritably. "Did you want something? Would you like to leave a phone number? I'll ask you out sometime." The man smiled, and Julian noticed he was missing one tooth. She didn't like him at all. He had a bald spot on his head, and he was kind of puny and small. "Not worth it," she said. "Permission to pass. I'm going out." The man stood up, and Julian headed for the exit, thinking that looks definitely mattered. He might be a good man, but his appearance was so repulsive that there was no desire to find out what kind of person he was. Barely crossing the threshold of her friend's apartment, Julian heard men's voices coming from the kitchen. "Hi, come in," Meryl said, giving her friend a smile. "Hi, how's he doing?" Julian asked in a whisper. "You'll see. Get undressed and let's go." Feeling a little anxious, Julian followed the Linnet into the kitchen. "Oh, Regina, hi," said her friend's husband. "Meet Julian. This is William. William, this is Julianne." "Nice to meet you," said the man, smiling broadly and looking at the woman with an undisguised appraising gaze. "Likewise," she replied, thinking that he was quite ordinary. On the street, she would have passed by and not noticed. Everyone sat down at the table set in the kitchen, and Alex, Meryl's husband, poured alcohol. Wine for the ladies, vodka for himself and his buddy. The party lasted for several hours, and afterwards William volunteered to walk the new acquaintance home. "What are your plans for tomorrow?" he asked as they stood outside Julian's front door. "I don't know yet," she replied, hoping that Justin would visit her on March 8th. "Maybe we could meet tomorrow. We'll get to know each other," he said with a smile. "Where should we go?" she asked, thinking that Justin, if he showed up, it would be closer to night, and during the day, she could meet William. "A cafe, a movie, a walk." "So, we could," she said. "Yes. Let me write down your number then." The man took out his phone and Julian dictated her number. "Let's do it tomorrow at 3, she said. "I was thinking closer to tonight, but 3 o'clock is 3 o'clock. I'll see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," she said goodbye to her new acquaintance and hurried home. Emmeline was already home. She was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee. "How's the potential fiancé?" she asked her sister as soon as she entered the apartment. So, she said. "Not a hit." "That's because you're fixated on Justine," she quoted her. "Justin had nothing to do with it, and I'm going out with this William guy tomorrow." "That's a good point," Emmeline said approvingly. Without opening her eyes, Julian fumbled for the phone, which was ringing frantically on the nightstand next to the bed. "Hello," she said in a sleepy voice. "Regina, I'm at your house. Happy holidays. Tell me your apartment number and I'll come up." A man's voice answered, and Julian opened her eyes and sighed heavily. "Austin, thank you for congratulating me, but no apartment numbers. Just leave me alone," she said, not hiding her annoyance. "At least come downstairs." Julian got out of bed and went to the window. Austin was standing at the front door with a large bouquet of white roses. She didn't feel like going downstairs to see him, and she didn't want flowers from a man she didn't like. "Okay," she said, and after dropping the call, she began to get dressed. As soon as Julian stepped outside, Austin immediately handed her a bouquet, which she reluctantly took. "Happy holidays. Let's go to a cafe and have some good wine," he said, not wanting to back down. "Thanks for the flowers, but you shouldn't have." "Austin, I've told you 100 times that nothing will happen between us, and I don't want to go anywhere with you." It was a little harsh, but this intrusive beau and work colleague was already boring Julianne. "Why are you being so stubborn? I'm not going to eat you," he answered, but not smiling. "I don't want to." The woman handed him the flowers and got ready to leave. "Take the flowers. It's from my heart." He handed the bouquet back to her, and Julianne immediately dashed out the front door. Wow, it's beautiful," Emmeline said, looking at the bouquet her sister had returned with. "I wish someone would give me one of those." "Take it," said her sister. No, you got one. She blew him off again. I feel sorry for him. Your phone was beeping, by the way. Putting the bouquet on the table, Julian went to her room and picked up her phone and started reading messages from coworkers and William. What's up? I ran to read faster, and Justin didn't even bother to send a text message, said her sister, looking into her room. Don't make it up, she replied. Though actually her sister was right. She was expecting a message from Justin. What a gorgeous bouquet. Emmeline put the bouquet she'd given her sister in a vase. I don't think you'll be getting one of these tonight. I don't care. It doesn't make me happy. Julian replied dryly and then looked at her phone, which was alerting her to a new message. It was from Justin. It was from Justin, wasn't it? Emmeline asked, seeing the change in her sister's face. Yes, Julian replied, reading Happy Holidays. Verbose. The sister shook her head. Would you stop it already? Regina mumbled and immediately her phone rang, but the number wasn't from her address book. Hello. Hi, Happy Holidays. A familiar male voice sounded, and Juliana immediately plopped down on the divan, pale and mouth open in amazement. Hello, Regina. Can you hear me? Hey, Evan, I can hear you. Sitting down next to her sister, Emmeline covered her mouth with her palm and widened her eyes in amazement. How are you? How are you? He asked. I'm fine. Julian replied, trying to come to her senses. The last thing she expected to hear was an ex. You're not married? Not yet. Why don't we get together? Regina was silent again, trying to come to her senses. Hello. Yeah, I can hear you. Why do we need to meet? She asked, trying to figure out if she wanted to see Evan. I've been thinking about you a lot. I'd like to see you. Just sit somewhere and talk. I'm busy today, Julian replied. Maybe you can make time. I don't know. I don't think so. She felt resentful again at the man who had cut her off so abruptly. How about tomorrow then? He asked. We'll see. Thanks for the congratulations, but I'm busy, so I can't talk much, Julian said in an indifferent tone. Okay, I'll call you later. Bye. Bye. Wow, Emmeline said in amazement when Julian ended the conversation. I'm shocked, she replied, looking at her sister. It's almost a year later. She's going to make a move, I'm sure. I hope you don't fall for it. Emmeline grinned. In the same puddle with the same slippers. Nah. I'm curious to meet you, though. She admitted it. He probably had an affair with someone else, realized it was better with you, and decided you've been waiting all year for him to come back. Should you be getting ready to meet William? Julian looked at her watch. I do. Aren't you going out? Tonight. I'm taking the girls to a coffee shop. Join us if you're free. It's a nice place to dance and play pool. Maybe, Julian said. William was waiting outside the movie theater, twirling a single rose in his hands. Happy holidays, he said, holding it out to Julian, who approached him. Thank you, she replied, taking the flower. After watching the comedy as planned, William suggested a walk in the park nearby. Can we go to your place? He asked after half an hour of walking. I'm freezing. You're not. Julian was a little taken aback. I thought we were talking about the cafe, she answered. She didn't like the way things were going. Honestly, I don't feel like it. I'd rather order sushi, for example, and sit at home. But you're so tense. He smiled. We're grown-ups, so what's the point in stalling? If you don't like me, then why did you agree to meet me? Isn't it fast? And why me? Julian asked, stopping. She wasn't crazy about William, and after these words she had no desire to see him again. You could come to my place, of course, but I'm renting a room. It's next door. It's not very nice. I don't live alone either. I live with my sister. And we're not going to anyone's place. Julian turned in the opposite direction. I'm cold too. Let's go to the bus stop. Julian, are you suggesting we go out for a month like teenagers and go to the movies? I'm not suggesting anything, she replied dryly, but I can't do that. So you don't like me. Shall we go home then? He asked. Let's go home. Julian was glad that the shuttle bus came quickly. The holiday mood had been ruined. First the annoying Austin, now this cocky guy, she thought. Better to hang out with her sister, get some female company, she decided. When she got off the bus, She threw the rose William had given her into the nearest trash can because it didn't look like much and she didn't need it from that man. The phone rang when Julianne was near the house. "Hello," she answered the phone. "Hello again. I'm right outside your house. Why don't we meet up?" Evan asked, and the woman chuckled nervously, thinking about what a day it was. "Evan, why do we have to meet?" she asked. "I really want to see you. Can I come over?" Julianne had only one question: why he'd left her after 4 years, and she wanted an answer, even if it was late. "All right. Come on in," she said. Emmeline wasn't home. Julianne changed her clothes and warmed up dinner. She was terribly hungry. She had barely finished her soup when the doorbell rang and she opened it to see Evan. Even though her feelings for the man were gone, she was still excited and tense. "This is for you." Evan handed her the lily and the cake. "You shouldn't have, but thank you," she replied. "Come into the kitchen," she said, going in herself. Evan sat down on a stool and Julianne put the flour in a vase and turned on the kettle. "You look good," said Evan, smiling and not taking his eyes off the woman. "You haven't changed at all." "You haven't changed either. We haven't seen each other for almost a year. Why did you suddenly think of me today?" she asked, sitting down across from me. "I often thought of you," he answered. "Then why did you leave me?" "We were doing well." Looking into his eyes, Julianne asked. "Didn't you understand?" He sighed heavily. "I cheated on you then. I met my first love by chance and it hit me. She and I broke up a couple months ago." "I see." Julianne grinned, and I felt even worse than I had before. "So what do you want from me now?" she asked dismissively. "Why don't we try a fresh start?" I was confused then, and then I realized that I didn't love her anymore, but I loved you, Evan said sadly, and there was something pleading for forgiveness in his gaze. "That's interesting. Evan, I was sick of you. I've been hurt and sick for a long time. You can't fix a broken cup. If you want, we can get married. We were good together and we'll be good together again." He got up from his seat and squatted down next to Julianne. "Forgive me, you fool," he whispered, taking her hands in his. Suddenly, she realized that she was ready to say yes to him. Memories of their life together came flooding back, and he seemed so sincere. But on the other hand, Evan hadn't thought about her all this time, just like when he cheated on her with his first love. I mean, would he do that if he loved her? No. Betrayal is unforgivable. She doesn't love him anymore, and she doesn't need a man like that. Julianne released her hands and got up from the stool. "Evan, when you love someone, you don't do that. There's no turning back." As soon as she said those words, she was in Evan's arms, and his lips were instantly on hers in a kiss. Julianne pushed Evan away from her. "Are you out of your mind?" she asked harshly, stepping a few steps away from him. "You think it's that easy? Go away." "Regina, I understand." He took a step toward her, but she put her hand out in front of her, letting him know not to come any closer. He couldn't resist. "Let's try it again." "I'm not ready for such experiments, knowing in absentia that nothing will work." She stared at the man, marveling at how easy he had it, and how many tears she'd shed, how she'd lived all this time. None of that mattered to him. This time the first love met. Then maybe the second will appear or a new temptation. She didn't want to go through it all again. And so with his appearance he triggered past memories, and past feelings were also remembered, but also pain and resentment, disappointment. "Evan, go away and don't come back," she said calmly, sighing. The man looked at his former lover and went out into the corridor. "Everyone has the right to make a mistake and repent. You are too categorical. I'm leaving. I hope you think about everything and give me a second chance," he said, tying the laces of his shoes. "Don't get your hopes up. Whoever betrayed you once will betray you again. And I don't have any love for you," she answered sharply. "Was there?" Evan grinned sadly. "I did, and it was very painful and bad." Julianne admitted honestly. "I want to make it up to you," he said wistfully, trying to take her hand, but Julianne wouldn't let him. Not everything can be fixed. She opened the front door, and Evan left the apartment with a sad look at Julianne. The woman returned to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. What kind of day is this? She asked herself. Are there any normal men in this world? After drinking the wine, Julianne looked at her watch. She didn't feel like going out, so she decided that she wouldn't go to her sister's cafe, but would rather watch some positive love movie at home. How angry she was at Evan for stirring up all those feelings that had been forgotten over time. When the phone rang, she flinched in surprise. "Well, are you coming?" Emmeline asked, and in the background music and a woman's tinkling laughter could be heard. "No, I don't feel like going anywhere," she said. "Why so sad? How'd it go with William?" "It didn't. He asked me to go home and continue the banquet. I also had time to talk to Evan. He suddenly wants to go back to living with another woman. I have a beautiful March 8th. Julian said sarcastically. "Yeah, all the more reason to join us. We'll sit in a purely sorority dance. I don't need them, these men. I don't want to ruin the holiday for them. Come on over." "You're probably right. I'm just so angry." After hanging up, Julian opened her closet. She chose a classic black dress and began to make up. When she was ready, her phone rang again. This time it was Justin calling, which the woman hadn't expected after his message. "Happy holidays." "Hi, what are you doing?" he asked. "You're the only thing I need to be happy about today," she thought, getting even angrier at the male population of the planet. When she heard his voice, she suppressed the joy from his call, which tried to seep through the resentment and anger. "I'm leaving," she answered briefly. "I thought I'd see you tonight," he said, and from his tone it was clear that the man was surprised to hear such an answer. "It's a holiday." "I'm sitting here waiting for you," Julianne thought, and the resentment in her soul was only growing. "I have other plans," she answered a little harshly. "Besides, we didn't have an appointment." "Are you mad at me?" he asked. Julianne exhaled. There was nothing to be angry about, because Justin had been honest and hadn't promised anything he didn't intend to do. "Not angry," Julian replied, calming down a little. "It's just that there are plans, so not tonight. Maybe later, when you're free." "I have a free day tomorrow. We could spend it together," Justin said. I don't know. I have to go," she said, though her desire to stay was overriding her common sense. "If you want to see me, call me. You don't seem to be in a good mood today. Happy holidays again." "Thank you." When she finished talking, Julianne sat down. She wanted to cry. Why did everything have to be like this? She wanted to meet Justin, but this man wasn't the one for her, even though she had feelings for him that she couldn't deny. She picked up her phone and hailed a cab. Finally, Emmeline said when she saw her sister, "We're already celebrating." The woman sat down at the table where, besides her sister, 2 of her friends were sitting. All the women were already well into the party. "Why are you so sour?" asked one of them. "Yes, had time to spoil the mood, men," Julian answered, taking the menu in her hands. "They are not worth to be sad about them and even less to be killed," replied the other. "Mine, when he went to this Caroline, I sighed with relief that now I don't have to put up with that asshole. There are few normal people, so we settle for all sorts of nonsense. What do we need?" "No." The woman drank a glass of vodka and wrinkled her nose. "I want normal human relations, love, care. And there are people around." Julian sighed and poured herself a shot of vodka from the decanter. "Austin was chasing after her. And what a bouquet he gave her this morning," said Emily. "So we turn our noses up at him. We want a Russian." "I can understand that. I like the European type of men too," said one of Emmeline's friends. "And we, Russian women, cannot accept and understand other faith. Julian doesn't need that Austin. Anyway, to you and me and to them." The second friend of her sister made a toast, raising a glass of vodka, and all the women followed her example. Julian couldn't remember the last time she danced like that. Having drunk a little alcohol, she felt that her mood had improved and her soul wanted a holiday. Let this holiday be without men, though not quite without men. After all, she had already met Ronald, and the other girls were not without attention from men. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was doing another slow dance with a new acquaintance. "Let's get out of here," he said in her ear in a promising tone. "Where to?" Julian wasn't sober, of course, but her brain wasn't so out of whack that she could go anywhere with Ronald. "My place," he said. And Julian suddenly stopped dancing and, freeing herself from his hands that were clutching her during the dance, laughed heartily. Ronald looked at the woman with bewilderment. Apparently a strong overdose of alcohol, quoted the man. Nope. Continuing to laugh, Julian replied. It's such a fun day today. They're all the same, Julian thought. It's like a cornucopia of fun today. She'd never had a day like this before. Julian returned to the table, still laughing. What's the matter with you? Her sister asked. Are you laughing or crying? Julian took a mirror out of her purse and started wiping off her mascara. I'm laughing, she answered her sister. Ronald just invited me to his place for a ride. Paul asked me out tomorrow. Emmeline's got a date too. I'm going straight to bed. That's the fourth one of the day. Julian laughed again. Austin didn't call. Emmeline said, if you mention him again, I'll bite you. I won't. I'm sorry. We should get to the house. Emmeline yawned and looked at her watch. Couldn't your Paul drive us? Julian asked her sister. He'd take a cab himself, but he lives in a different neighborhood, she answered. We'll call a cab. Julian remembered that Justin had told her to call him when she was free and wanted to see him, and so she did. Hello, a sleepy voice answered. Still want to get together? She asked. What time is it? Justin yawned and opened his eyes. Fourth hour of the night or morning. Julian, he answered immediately. Where are you? He asked, hearing music and women's voices. With the girls in the cafe, we were celebrating our holiday. Should I come? Can you pick me and Emmeline up from the cafe? I can. Give me the address. He yawned again and got out of bed. Julian was surprised. She hadn't expected Justin to agree to come pick her up in the middle of the night. Well? Emmeline asked her sister. Justin will pick us up, Julian replied, taking another shot of vodka. Wow. I'm actually surprised he showed up today. Me too. There's got to be something else to do besides just show up at night, Emmeline remarked. If you ask me, you should have called a cab and told Justin to fuck off. He's no different from William and Evan. Tomorrow, Julian said, munching on a pickle. Tomorrow what? Emmeline asked. Tomorrow I'll send it. I don't want this kind of relationship anymore. I'd rather suffer for a month, but I can't go on like this. I can hardly believe it. I like him a lot even more. Today I was convinced of that. But I don't want love without commitment. Falling in love with a man just because he's good in bed is stupid. You don't know anything about him. He came and went, and that's love. Once in a movie, that doesn't count. Actually, we still talk and we always cuddle. I don't know how to explain it, but it's warm when he's around, nice, calm, cozy. Paul came up to them and took Emmeline to a slow dance. A drink. One of her sister's friends came to the table and poured vodka into her and Julian's glasses. Aha, she said, drinking it down, immediately washing it down with tomato juice. Julian almost listened to the phone ring. Well, I'm here, come on out, said Justin, and she immediately looked for her sister with her eyes. 5 minutes, she answered, heading towards her dancing sister. The carriage is here, it's time, she said. Really? It hadn't even been a year. Emmeline said goodbye to her beau and took her things and followed her sister out the door. Justin got out of the car. A smile played on his face when he saw Julian and Emmeline swaying. I can see well, he said, opening the front and then the back doors of the car. Great, Emmeline replied, flopping into the back seat. Great, Julian said, sitting down in the front seat. She wasn't drunk, but her eyes were foggy and she felt a little dizzy. Oh, flowers, said Emmeline, seeing the 2 bouquets next to her. Don't crush them, Justin said, and Julian looked back. On the back seat were 2 very beautiful bouquets, assembled from different flowers. Turning her head back, she looked at Justin. One for you and one for Emmeline, he said, as if reading her mind. Why would he do that? Julian asked snidely. That's an odd question. It's a holiday, he answered. Julian looked at the flowers again. It was so unexpected that the woman fell into a stupor. She wondered if Justin had feelings for her too. After all, he'd come for her as soon as she asked him to. She'd never asked for anything before. If he didn't care about her, would he buy her flowers? Julian put the bouquet in a vase. Can I buy you tea? Justin asked, sitting down on a stool by the kitchen table. Julian silently turned on the kettle and sat down opposite the man, while Emmeline looked in the fridge. "Oh, cake. Where from?" She looked at her sister and pulled out the cake. "Evan brought it," she said. "It's good for something. I feel like having tea with something sweet and savory." Emmeline put the cake on the table and went to get tea glasses and plates and spoons, taking a vase for her bouquet. "Evan," Justin looked at Julianne. "Your mascara is smeared, by the way. Were you crying?" "No, not at all. I was laughing. I'd had the kind of day that makes you laugh," she said, grinning. "Justin, this is so nice and so unexpected. Thanks again for the flowers," Emmeline said as she filled a vase with water and placed her bouquet in it. The man smiled. "So who's Evan?" he asked again. Julianne waved her hand. "My ex. Came to make up," she answered casually. "Was it successful?" Justin asked. "No." Julianne took a knife and handed it to Justin. "Cut the cake, please," she said. The kettle boiled and Emmeline began to pour the boiling water into glasses. "The sachets are on the table," she said, looking at Justin. There was silence for a while, and then, taking a bite of cake, Emmeline broke the silence. Very much so," she said, closing her eyes in pleasure. "I don't even want to eat it because Evan brought it." Julianne looked at the piece of cake with obvious disdain. "It's not the cake's fault, Evan bought it." Emmeline took another bite. Justin smiled as he listened to the sisters' conversation. "Really, really delicious cake," he said, and Julianne immediately took a bite and put it in her mouth, admitting that Justin and Emmeline were right. It was really good. Finishing her tea and finishing her piece of cake, Emmeline yawned. "I'm going to bed. Don't make too much noise," she said and left the kitchen. Julianne glared at Justin. "I didn't realize the format of our relationship meant holiday gifts," she said. "Are there any rules about that?" he asked. "No." The woman got up from her stool. "I'm going to take a bath," she said, and headed for the tub. Wrapped in a towel, Julianne came out of the bathroom. Justin was still in the kitchen, looking at his phone. "I'm going to bed," she told him and followed him to her room. Justin put his phone in his pocket and followed. "You're obviously not in the mood tonight," he said and hugged Julianne. "I was today and yesterday." She released herself from his embrace and threw off her robe and began to put on her pajamas. The man left the room and returned a minute later, holding the bag he'd left in the hallway. "Maybe this will cheer you up a little," he said, holding it out to Juliana. She took it silently and looked inside. There was a big, beautiful box. "What's this?" she asked, pulling the box out, looking at Justin in bewilderment. "A modest holiday present," he replied. Julianne sat down on the bed and opened the box. It was a bath kit containing salts, balms, body scrub, shower gel, handmade soap, and a few other jars and bottles she decided to study later. "Thank you," she said a little absent-mindedly. "This was all too sudden." "How about a kiss? You're colder than an iceberg today," he said. Julianne got up from the bed and walked over to him. Placing her hands on his chest, she touched her lips to his and her mood began to change for the better. Justin quickly freed her from her pajamas and laid her on the bed, and Julianne, despite her recent desire to end their relationship, completely forgot about that desire, unable to deny herself what she wanted. When she opened her eyes in the morning, she saw that Justin wasn't there, but she didn't have time to be upset when she heard voices in the kitchen. She put on her pajamas and, yawning, went in there. "Good morning, country," said Emmeline. Her sister and Justin were talking animatedly, drinking tea with pizza and yesterday's cake. "Good morning, or rather day," Justin said. Julianne looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. "Do you want pizza?" "I will," she answered, sitting down next to Justin. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Not really." Julianne yawned again. "You two stay here, and I'm going to go lie down some more." Emmeline got up from her seat and walked out of the kitchen. "What were you talking about?" Julianne asked Justin. "Just about nothing," he answered, eating another slice of pizza. After eating, Julianne went back into the room and lay down on the bed. "Are you planning on lying around all day?" Justin asked her. "I'm so tired. That's the limit of my dreams right now," she answered and smiled. "Me too. Do you mind if I keep you company?" he asked and lay down next to her. "I don't mind." Julianne nestled against his chest, and he put one arm around her. She closed her eyes and sighed peacefully. She felt so good right now. She didn't want to talk about their relationship right now, but to enjoy the moment when Justin was near her and she was cozy and warm in his arms. Waking up, Julian was lost in time, whether it was work or still a day off. She looked at the clock. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Recovering her memory of recent events, she sighed and leisurely got out of bed. Justin wasn't there as usual, and her mood had taken a sharp turn for the worse. Her head was a little sore and she was thirsty. Julian wandered into the kitchen. Justin was sitting at the table, sipping coffee. "How are you feeling? Did you sleep well?" he asked. "I think so now. I'm thirsty." She poured a full glass of water and emptied it. Just then the doorbell rang and the woman almost jumped in surprise. "I'll get it," Justin said. "It's a delivery." He walked out into the hallway, closing the kitchen door behind him. A couple minutes later, he came back with a package. "What's this?" Julian looked at the package. "Ordered Chinese food. You want some?" "I will. Is Emmeline still asleep?" Justin shrugged. "She wasn't in the kitchen when I woke up, and I didn't look in the room." Julian walked out of the kitchen and went back in, making sure her sister wasn't home. She remembered that Paul from the cafe had asked her out yesterday, and she concluded that Emily had gone to meet him. "She's not at home," she said, taking a seat across from Justin. The man set a few boxes in front of her with Chinese noodles with chicken, eggplant and sweet and sour sauce, and steamed buns with caramel. "It's delicious." "Ah, thank you." Justin always ordered some kind of food when he came to see her, which was nice, but not everything Julian wanted. "You're welcome," he replied and smiled. "Justin, what's next?" Julian suddenly blurted out and looked at the man warily, waiting for an answer. "We can go for a walk or watch a movie," he answered, finishing his noodles. "I don't mean tonight." She squeezed it out of her. Justin put down his fork and looked at the woman. "Regina, not now," he said in a serious tone. "When? Please understand me. This is so hard for me. I know that you all said that I agreed, but I can't take it anymore." "And how do you want? Marriage?" he asked, staring at her unceasingly. "Yes, marriage, children. I'm not asking you to propose to me, and I'm not going to give you any ultimatums. It's just, if you don't want a relationship that's anything other than come and go, we should break up." It was very hard, but Julian couldn't go on as it was, wanting more. She wasn't ready to continue settling for less. Justin gloomed and thought for a moment. "I think I'll be going now." He rose from the table, and Julian felt a lump forming inside her, and her heart stopped. She got up and followed him out into the hallway. There was silence. Once he was dressed, Justin looked at her, and she caught something akin to regret in his gaze. "Bye." It was all he said as he opened the door. "Bye." Julianne barely whispered. She slammed the door behind Justin and went to her room, falling onto her bed and crying herself to sleep. Emmeline got home around 11. The girl was in high spirits, and she was holding 3 scarlet roses. "Anybody home?" From the threshold she asked, and without waiting for an answer, knocked on her sister's room. "Come in," she answered. "Regina, what are you doing?" The smile faded from her face when she saw her sister crying, lying on her back and staring at the ceiling. "Justin and I broke up," she said, sniffling. Emmeline sat down on the bed. "It seemed to me that your relationship was changing," she said, looking at her sister sympathetically. "While you were asleep and we were chatting in the kitchen, he seemed to me quite a normal man. And the fact that he took us away, congratulated you. I thought he might have feelings for you after all." "We talked." "Apparently not since he left." Julian cried again. "Why am I so unlucky?" "It's not you. It's men these days. He's gone and gone. You don't have to feel so bad about it." "Emmeline, I think I'm falling in love with him already. I don't want it to end like this." Julian looked at her sister, wiping away her tears. "I don't want it to just end like that. This love without commitment is just torturing me. I told you a long time ago that you couldn't do that. And it was clear you had a soft spot for him too." Emmeline sighed. "Look, Paul has a friend who's been asking if I have an open girlfriend. Why don't the 4 of us go out next time?" "Hey, I don't want to do anything." Julian mumbled. "You're gonna have to back off a little bit then. I asked about this friend. Paul says he's a nice guy. He's 3 years younger than you, but that's nothing. Justin's younger too, right? Yeah, a year and a half. I'll ask for a picture. If you don't like it, don't go. It's not like you're missing anything. I'll make a date for next weekend. Suit yourself. Julian answered indifferently and turned on her side. She didn't feel like doing anything right now. Even today and last night she had felt happy for a while, but she was probably just wishful thinking, because if Justin had feelings for her, would he have left? No, of course not, her mind told her. The next day, Julian came home from work blacker than a cloud, and Emmeline thought her sister was going to start throwing lightning bolts. Everything's mad, said Julian, tossing the grocery bag on the floor carelessly. Like what? Emmeline picked up the bag and carried it into the kitchen. Austin. God, I'm so sick of him. I've got some bad news too. Albert's being promoted, and we have a new department head starting Monday. We just started working normally with an adequate man after the last idiot, and now we'll get assigned again. Well, don't get excited. Maybe this one will be normal too. My gut says no. Julian sat down on a stool. My gut can be wrong too. I sent you a picture of Steve today, Paul's friend. What do you think of him? I think he's pretty cool. We're going to that cafe we went to on Saturday. Don't say no. I won't. To be honest, I haven't looked at the pictures. Julian took out her phone and looked at the picture. Normal, she said dryly. You can't beat a wedge with a wedge, so why give up the chance to meet someone new? Maybe this one will be okay, she thought, and sighed heavily. Thoughts of Justin had been on her mind all day, and Julian was angry at herself for being hurt by someone who wasn't worth it. You should have seen yourself from the outside. You had a face like you'd eaten lemons, said Emmeline when she and her sister got home. Steve's pretty normal. I know it's hard to switch quickly, but you don't have to cut him off right away. What am I gonna do? All I can think about is Justin. Julian sighed heavily. I don't want Steve, I want Justin. You're just used to him. You'll get used to him, you'll see. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow's a big day, Julian said with a little sigh. Cheer up. Good night, Emmeline replied to her sister. I'll do my best. Julian went to the bathroom and then plopped down on the bed and closed her eyes. She couldn't get Justin out of her mind. As soon as Julian stepped into the office, Austin came up to her and handed her a candy bar. Austin, for the millionth time, don't try to hit on me, it's useless, she said, ignoring the gift. I've never seen a woman more stubborn than you, replied the man. It's just a chocolate bar, you can have tea with it. Thank you, but you don't have to give me anything else. She looked at the man sternly. Hello, everyone. Julian's co-worker and pal Fiona walked into the office and gave the people there a smile. Just ran into the general and apparently he was walking with our new boss. The woman looked at her watch. In 10 minutes we're expected in the office. So how's the first impression? Julian asked immediately. Who knows? Fiona shrugged. He looked normal, young. Austin left the women and Fiona sat down next to Julian. I can see he's not giving up. She looked at the candy bar. Water sharpens stone, she said with a smile. It's called obsession. You tell a person no, and he doesn't understand. Julian replied a little irritated. He's pushy, persistent. Let's not talk about him. He's really annoying me already. Fiona looked at her watch again. Let's go meet the new chief. It's a shame they took Albert away from us, but let's hope he's okay. Fiona looked at the rest of her co-workers. What are we sitting around for? Everybody out, she said. The whole department went into the office in a friendly crowd. As soon as Julian saw her new boss, her face changed and she was ready to faint, but she kept on her feet, grabbing Fiona's hand. Why are you so green? She asked, looking surprised at Julian, who looked as if she'd had the biggest shock of her life. Justin stared intently at Juliana. You could tell by the look in his eyes that he was just as shocked. This is what happens when you know absolutely nothing about a person, Julian thought. She wasn't prepared for this surprise. Justin struggled to pull himself together and turned his attention to work. After introducing himself to all the employees, he made a short speech about their goals and objectives for the current month and then sent everyone to their seats. It was not easy to work after such a meeting. Julian had no idea how to work with him in the same office. Her heart was pounding frantically, and her mind was a jumble of different thoughts. "What's the matter with you?" Fiona asked, looking at her colleague. "Have you met our new chief?" "Why would you think that?" Julian asked, trying to regain her composure and look carefree. "You looked at him like that, and he looked at you too, and it was like he was stunned. It was very noticeable," quoted Fiona. "You're right. We do know each other." Julian stared at the computer, not wanting to go into details. "You'll see," he said, turning toward the pie yard. "Let's get some pie," he continued, pulling into the parking lot. After buying the pie, they got back into the car. After driving just 5 minutes to the yard of the house next door to Pie Court, Justin parked in one of the front doors, and Julian immediately guessed that he had brought her to his house. "Let's go," he said as soon as they got out of the car. Julian followed him, but not to the front door, but to the playground. A little girl of about 3 smiled broadly and climbed down from the swings on which an older woman was swinging her. "Daddy, Daddy," she ran toward Justin, and Julian stood frozen in one place, eyes fluttering in amazement. Justin picked the girl up in his arms and she wrapped her arms around his neck. "How's my bunny doing?" he asked. "Good. Grandma and I have been waiting for you here," she answered and looked at Julian. "Daddy, who is that?" she asked. Justin turned to face Juliana and set his daughter on the ground. "That's our guest. Call Grandma. Let's go home for tea and cake," replied he to his daughter. The girl approached Juliana, and she squatted down and smiled. "My name is Juliana, and you?" she asked. "Veronica," the girl answered and immediately ran back to the playground. Justin looked intently at Juliana. "My mom lives with us, helping me with Veronica," he said. "You have a very sweet daughter," Julian said with a smile. A minute later, Veronica came to them again, accompanied by her grandmother. The woman smiled good-naturedly at Julian. "Hello, I'm Justin's mom, Georgia," she said. "Hello, Julian." A little embarrassed, she said. "Daddy, what kind of pie did you get?" Veronica asked, looking at the box he was holding. "Your favorite cherry," he answered, and everyone headed for the house. As they drank tea and talked casually at the table, Justin watched Julianne intently, and she felt as if he were trying to read her mind, and she sensed that he was still tense. "Would you like to see my dollhouse?" Veronica asked and looked at Julian. "Of course I do," she said, still smiling. "Then let's go." The little girl got off the chair and took Julian's hand and led her to her room. "Good woman," said Georgia to her son. "Are you seeing her?" "You could say that," he answered his mother. "Justin, I think she and Veronica will get along. Julian's nothing like that Caroline of yours." The woman cringed a little at the mention of her son's ex. That Caroline had seemed white and fluffy, but it turned out that a man with a child was a burden to her. Her dreams of dumping Veronica on her grandmother had failed, and in the end Justin had parted with her without a drop of regret. Julian walked into Veronica's room and immediately saw a large dollhouse with all kinds of furniture. "Wow," she replied, looking at it and thinking that she would play in such a lovely thing herself. "Do you like it?" Veronica asked. "Very much," she answered. "Will you play with me?" "Sure." Justin walked into his daughter's room and smiled as he watched her and Julianne playing together. "Can I join you?" he asked. "Sure, Daddy," Veronica replied, and Julianne said that she really liked my toys and she didn't have any as a child. Juliana felt happy. As the three of them played and laughed happily, she suddenly felt like they were a family, and she felt warm at the thought. She liked Justin's mom too, not to mention the adorable little girl with 2 ponytails sitting next to her. She was also finally convinced that Justin cared about her, wondering if he probably thought that having a daughter would push Julianne away, and she wouldn't want to have another relationship with him. As they played, they lost track of time a little, but Georgia reminded them that it was past Veronica's bedtime. "Here we go," she said, pouting her lips. "We'll definitely play again later," said Justin, kissing the girl on the cheek. "Julian, will you come to visit us again?" Veronica asked, looking at the guest. "If you invite me, I will definitely come," she answered. "I will. We'll play with my other toys. I have a lot of them." "Right, Daddy?" She looked at Justin. "We will. Now it's time for the good girls to wash up and go to bed," he replied. Before going to wash up and go to bed, Veronica hugged her father. "Good night, Daddy," she said and walked over to Juliana, and she almost cried when the little girl hugged her too. Such a sweet and affectionate little girl, she thought. "Good night, Julianne," she said and went into the bath with her grandmother. "So cute," Juliana said to Justin, wiping a tear from her cheek, which she still couldn't hold back, being touched by what was happening. Justin smiled contentedly. "Come on, I'll take you home," he said. "Come on," Julian replied. She was overwhelmed with joy that Justin had introduced her to this family, let her into his world, which until now had been a mystery to her. "Are you going home?" Julian asked Justin when they stopped outside her front door. "I can stay at your place," he said, "if you don't mind." "I don't mind," Julian said with a smile. Emmeline wasn't home. They went into the kitchen and Julian put the kettle on. "Justin, I'm really glad you introduced me to your mother and daughter," she said, looking at the man. "And you still want another relationship?" he asked, looking at her intently. "Of course I do. Do you really think that having a child with you can affect my feelings for you? Especially since Veronica is so cute?" Julian asked sincerely, and Justin smiled. "A lot of people are put off by that. And what are your feelings for me?" Continuing to smile, he asked. Julian was a little embarrassed. "I love you and I want to be with you. And Veronica doesn't scare me away at all, on the contrary," she admitted honestly. The kettle boiled and Julian got up to get the glasses and pour the tea. Justin got up from his seat and walked over to her. "I want a different relationship with you two," he said and hugged the woman. "Do you love me?" she asked, looking into his eyes. "Of course I do," he answered. If he didn't love her, he wouldn't have wanted anything. And certainly he wouldn't have introduced me to his mother and Veronica. "Let's sit down. I want to tell you something else." He sat down on a chair, pulling Julianne onto his lap. "Veronica isn't my daughter. She's my niece," he began. "My sister died after giving birth. Daddy ran away when Karen was still pregnant, and after she died, he didn't want his daughter. Wrote a waiver. I went straight to adoption. Wanted the girl to have a father as she didn't have a mom. Veronica doesn't know that, of course. For her, I'm her birth father, and for me, she's my own daughter." Julian looked at Justin with surprise and sadness. That's how it is, she thought, having received such unexpected information. Veronica looked a little like Justin, so there was no doubt that she was related to him. She must miss her mom. Juliana sighed, imagining how hard it must be for a little girl like that to be without a mom, especially when everyone around her has one. Of course she does. But not every woman is able to love and accept someone else's child. My past relationships are a very good example of that, he said sadly. I could do it. Julian replied and smiled, and Justin kissed her immediately. They had a glass of tea and went to their room. I love you even more now, she said, hugging the man. Shall we go to my place after work tomorrow? He asked, pulling her close to him. If the new boss does not load to the full, then we will go. Smiling, she answered. He won't. He is quite adequate and will spare the woman he loves. Justin laughed and immediately began kissing Julianne, slowly releasing her from her clothes. They drove to work together and Julianne was glowing with happiness. Well. Fahima looked at her co-worker. I don't recognize you, she remarked. It was clearly not without a man. Did you and Evan get back together? No, of course not. Julian replied. What was, is gone. Then who? Come on, tell me. The woman took her seat and stared expectantly at her colleague. A completely different man. Let's get to work, she replied. Of course, soon everyone would know about her and Justin, but for now she didn't want to talk about it. Austin entered the office and walked past the women, barely saying hello, and Julian breathed a sigh of relief, hoping that he had finally realized that his advances were futile and that he would leave her alone. Justin was already waiting in the car when Julian left the office. They decided it was better to leave the workplace separately so that rumors wouldn't spread. Let's stop at the baby store on the way, she said. Why? Justin asked, pulling out of the parking lot. I want to buy Veronica a present. The man smiled. She already has a room full of toys, he replied. So what? When they go to visit children, they always bring something. So let's go and tell me what she likes. Let's go. I promised I'd get her a puppy patrol set, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. After some thought, Justin said, Then I'll buy it. Julian replied happily. When they arrived at Justin's house, Veronica was walking on the playground with her grandmother, just like yesterday. When she saw them, she immediately ran toward them. Daddy, it's so great that Juliana came to us again, she said as she hugged Justin and then walked over to Julianne, who squatted down and opened her arms. Veronica hugged the woman and smiled. Are we all going to play together again tonight? She asked. Of course we will. I also have a present for you. Julian took out a box with a set of puppies from the cartoon Puppy Patrol. I've wanted them for so long, the girl exclaimed happily. Grandma, look. She immediately showed the set to Georgia. How wonderful, she said. She looked at Julian with a smile and immediately turned to her son. Justin, Grandma called. Grandpa's blood pressure is off the charts again. I'll go to them. Take Veronica to daycare tomorrow, okay? Sure, Mom, go. I can pick her up myself. Be sure to call me later to let me know how Grandpa's doing. After saying goodbye to everyone, Georgia left, and the three of them went to Justin's house. After dinner, they played with their new toys together, and again the time flew by very quickly and it was time to put Veronica to bed. Grandma wasn't home, Veronica said. She usually gives me a bath before I go to bed. I can give you a bath if you don't mind, Julian answered. That's great. I have toys in my bathtub too. Veronica took Julian's hand and led her into the bathroom. Justin filled the tub with water. Just don't stay in here too long, he said smiling, and stepped out, leaving the two of them alone. Veronica dumped all her bath toys out of the small red basin into the water and, laughing, splashed Julian a little. You little bully, she laughed, wiping the water off her face. Julian didn't have much experience with children, but she really enjoyed messing around with this little girl. After playing with Veronica in the bathtub for a while, she washed the girl and then wiped her dry, wrapped her in a towel, and brought her into the room where Justin was waiting for them. And the story? Veronica asked when she was put to bed. I'll read it now, said Justin, picking up the storybook. The girl looked at the woman with a smile, and Justin handed the book to Juliana, who began to read a fairy tale about a little house. Justin looked at her and at Veronica, thinking that this time he had not made a mistake in choosing a woman, and Juliana would be a wonderful mother and wife. Julian had no sooner finished reading the story than Veronica fell asleep, and she and Justin left her room. Will you stay at my place? He asked, putting his arm around the woman, and Juliana nodded in agreement. Are you going to live with us now? Veronica asked Julian as they ate breakfast together in the kitchen. She looked at Justin, feeling a little awkward. I hope so, Justin answered with a smile as he looked at Julian. Are you going to be my mom now? Veronica asked her again. I would like that, Julian answered. Wouldn't you? She smiled at the girl, thinking that she would really like that. Me too. Daddy says I'm going to have a mom, but I don't have one, she replied. Daddy was right. I do now. Let me braid your pigtails for you. Julian looked at Justin. Do you have any rubber bands for your hair? She asked him. I'll get some. The man got up from the table and went into the room. Are you and Daddy picking me up from daycare together today? The girl asked, smiling at Julian. I think we will do everything together now, and I have long dreamed of such a pretty daughter like you. Julian stroked the girl's cheek. She and Justin took Veronica to the garden and then drove to work. In the evening, they picked her up and went home to Justin's house again. Will you move in with me? Justin asked Julian as they cuddled together and went to bed. Yes, she answered, pressing herself against him. Will you marry me? He asked, and Juliana raised her head and looked fondly into his eyes. Of course I will, she answered and kissed him on the lips. The next day after work, they went to Julian's house to pick up her things. Emmeline was at home. Seeing her sister with Justin surprised her. They hadn't seen each other for the past few days. Emmeline had been having an affair with Paul and hadn't been home, and neither had Julianne, who didn't know that her sister's life had changed because she hadn't said anything at all on the phone. Hi, she said, looking at her sister in a somewhat judgmental way. We're just getting our stuff, Julian answered. What kind of stuff? Emmeline asked, not hiding her surprise. "I'm moving in with Justin," Julian said with a smile. "That's news. You're not getting married by any chance?" she asked. "We are," Justin answered and smiled broadly. "Wow. Well, I'm happy for you." Emmeline was a little embarrassed to hear that. Who would have thought that her sister and Justin's relationship would take such a turn for the worse? She hadn't expected it, but she was happy for her sister. Julian went to live with Justin, and a couple months later they were married. Georgia moved out on them, deciding that her son and his wife and Veronica should live separately. Justin and Juliana persuaded her to stay because she did not interfere with them at all, but the woman was adamant in her decision, promising that she would visit them and periodically pick up Veronica from kindergarten. When Juliana's apartment was completed, they decided to rent it out and also bought a small cottage, where Georgia immediately began to plant everything that could grow. "Mom, when is he going to be born?" Veronica asked Juliana, looking at her still small belly. "It's not very soon," she answered, putting dinner on the plates. "We don't even know if it's a boy or a girl yet." "I think it will be a boy," said Veronica. "And why do you think so?" Justin asked her. "Because I'm a girl, so now we need a boy," with a serious look replied Veronica. Julian lightly ruffled the girl's hair and smiled at her husband. "Here, enjoy your meal, little mouse." The woman put a plate in front of Veronica, which contained her favorite mashed potatoes with a cutlet. "Delicious," she replied and began to eat the contents of the plate. Julian sat down at the table and smiled as she watched her husband and daughter devour the dinner she had prepared. How happy she was that her dream had come true. She has a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and in half a year there will be one more baby in their family. Veronica quickly began to call her mom because the baby for a very long time lacked a mother, and Juliana sincerely loved her and became for her the real mom. In their family reigned peace and harmony because each of its members was happy and loved. There is no love without commitment. After all, when there is love, there is a desire to let your soulmate into your world, to share joy and sadness, ups and downs, and obligations are not burdensome when there is love, because caring for loved ones brings joy.